video to make right now. I was just watching. I don't mean to call out anybody, any other YouTuber out there and stuff like that, but I was reviewing a Mark Moss video just now where he was talking about the 60-minute interview with Jerome Powell. And this is a very common thing that I am finding. I'm not trying to call out Mark. He's a bro. I've met him personally. He's a great dude. I love his information. But the perception that people have of Jerome Powell when it comes to some of the things that are taking place within the inflation scenario are so misunderstood. They are, I mean, it's just to the point now that I just see this mass delusion taking place within everybody, the mainstream media, the social medias, the people that I talk to, all the politicians, everybody has got this thing completely like just, I don't understand. I must be the crazy one, right? Because now it's gotten to the point that, I have called this stuff out. I left 2 videos down in the description, one of them to the review of the 60-minute interview that Mark was doing. And it has a clip of Jerome Powell saying that he was wanting or believing or thinking or expecting or hoping or dreaming or praying for help from the supply side of things. And I said that was completely incapable of happening. It wasn't going to take place. I put another clip to a video that I did 2.5 years ago saying that exact thing, that there is no way that they are going to get help from the supply side of things if you are planning on damaging the consumer. Why would the supply side come? Why would they be like, why would I manufacture? Why would I distribute? Why would I invest? Why would I participate inside of a system that is going to have a consumer, my absolute product that is coming to me, being damaged? Like, why would they do that? It does not make any sense whatsoever, right? And so now when I think about some of these things that are taking place out there, especially when I start reading articles or finding, videos like this, everybody's got it wrong. Like, literally everybody. I must be the only one who has it wrong because everybody else has it right, because I don't see it their way. The Fed had too low of an inflation expectation. It was running persistently too low rather than too high. By going out there and saying, hey, we are going to get help from the supply side of things, wasn't going to work. I said it. Now, I could not have been the only person in the world, especially the economist at the Federal Reserve, who said that that wasn't going to work. Right? You would think with 150 top economists working at the Federal Reserve, one of them would have said, I don't think that's going to work, bro. Right? I don't think you're going to get help from the supply side of things when you go and damage the consumer like that. I'm pretty sure that they knew that that was going to take place. And by calling that out, saying we are going to get help from the supply side of things to help alleviate the inflation pressure that we are experiencing, knowing that it wasn't going to work, and then come later, they go, we misunderstood. We didn't get that part right. What happens to inflation expectation? It starts to elevate, right? That's how they get their inflation expectation. It is a complete credible threat. And I was calling it out years ago. And I was trying to explain it then, but nobody was getting it. They were saying, even then, they were saying, dude, you got it wrong. But I called it out. Just go and look at the clips, right? Like I said, I'm not trying to, put anybody else's information down. I'm not trying to put anybody else in like a position in which that they are like, considered that they're wrong or whatever. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to pinpoint. I'm not trying to call out, right? I'm just trying to call this stuff for the way that I see it. And man, do I see it so much differently than everybody else. And I'm not wrong about this stuff, I feel like I'm the only one who seems to be talking about some of the things that I'm talking about. But then again, I'm the only one who seems to be breaking down every single thing that the Federal Reserve is saying going back 20 years. And I know I'm not the only one doing it, but I guess I'm the only one doing it from a position in which that I'm able to call out the inaccuracy of believing that they were going to get help from the supply side. Right? I don't know how many people were doing that. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm wound up on coffee this morning, and that clip really got me going. So, good morning. Nice, UE. Wow, we are witness. Yes, you are. Good morning, you uneducated beauties. What does George Gammon think of your theory? I don't know. I haven't talked to George in a while. In fact, I haven't talked to George since I went to the last Rebel Capitalist event. So, like I said, guys, I haven't really been in communication or watching other people's stuff. I've been focusing in on my stuff, like on what it is that I'm working on the theories that I have. This is the thing, like, I get almost a little upset when I think about sometimes when people say, dude, you should be so much more. Why are you working at a lumber yard and sitting in a car? And I think about that and I'm like, dude, if I was doing anything else but what I am doing, I would not be finding the information that I am finding. I mean, I'm not killing it. I'm by any means, but I'm not like stressing out either. And so I mean, if I was doing anything else, I would not be finding this information. I would not have seen the supply chain breakdown as clearly as I did if I wasn't involved with it as deeply as I am. You know, I mean, this is one, like, everybody who's watching this video or going to watch this video once it's uploaded is going to be the few people out there who truly understand that the Federal Reserve knew that the supply chain would not come back and that it would keep the inflation expectations elevated because that's what they needed, right? And if you don't believe that, just go and look at, well, where is it? Is it right here? Bam, right there, right? Monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world. Today, we face an altogether different set of problems stemming from a very low neutral interest rate, that is, the short-term real interest rate consistent with an economy operating at its potential alongside low and stable inflation. Ironically, the problem we need to solve these days is the risk of inflation that is persistently too low rather than too high. They got it. And they're still getting it. And Jerome Powell is feeding it with that damn 60-minute interview that everybody seems to believe. That was a lie. It was a straight up lie. They knew they weren't going to get help from the supply side. They knew it. And by Jerome Powell saying, oh man, we thought we were going to get help from the supply side of things. We did. We really, so good. Such a good lie. I mean, I have a hard time even keeping a straight face. It was BS. It was complete BS. Right? But everybody believes it. Right now, everybody believes that. So frustrating to try and get this stuff out there and try and get it to the people so that all right. Let's see here. Good morning, Simon. Forward guidance is euphemism for lying through their teeth. It really is. Good day, Simon. Read the piece The Economist magazine did about Powell's Carlyle Group tenure. Simon is a genius. Me and him used to, yeah. Who is this? Jay, smoke dope together. He's a smart dude. All right. Thanks, Wayne. Was just on another live too. Good morning, everyone. Calling Snake Eyes. Right on. Nice shirt, Simon. I got me one of them, plus a signed and the Fed hat. Also scored a signed cash flow game. All right on. All nighter. Hi there, everyone. The bonds are not going to sell and the Fed will get stuck with them. Why? Oh, well, I don't believe that. I think the Treasury is, go and look at the Treasury General account right now. That thing is sitting on almost $1 trillion. You're getting prepared to do a bond buyback program. If there's bond out there that is not having the markets standing up to go and purchase it, the Treasury will be like, oh, we're there. Here we go. I'll buy that bond off you. Don't worry. That market stays liquid. Like, just go and look at the Treasury General account right now. There's more money in it than has been. Put it this way, the only time they really ever had this much money in the Treasury General account is if they were doing stimulus programs. Right? That's something to think about. Like, the last time there was money of this magnitude inside the Treasury General account, they were doing stimulus programs. That's like, I mean, just take that into consideration. That money is going to have a purpose here soon, right? And it's to buy back bonds. It's to keep the bond market liquid because we're going to run into a liquidity crisis soon. All right. Love the tee, love the shirt. Yeah, thanks, guys. I knew I had to put on the Rebel Capitalist shirt today just to make sure that everybody knows that I'm not trying to knock anybody else, right? The rebel capitalists out there who are giving this information out there are hardcore people who really understand a lot of this system that's going out there, that's going on. But there's something from the working class that is different, right? They're 30,000 feet in the air. We're standing on the ground. We are the supply chain. They are viewing the supply chain. It's much different, right? So when you are actively participating within the supply chain itself, you are going to view things in a much different fashion. And then when you take on a macroeconomics level of understanding where you're referring back to speeches made back in 2018 where they are damn scared of the fact that they did not have an inflation that was running at the 2% target and that they needed to run it at an average of 2% over time. And it was said right here in a speech from 2018. And everybody thinks that the Fed failed. They didn't. They're achieving their monetary policy strategy. Just go and read the speech. Monetary policy strategy for a low neutral interest rate world. Think about some of the things that John Williams was saying and things that have occurred since then. They totally achieved their goals. It doesn't seem that way. It seems like they failed, but that's part of it. And once you recognize it, you can see it. And this is a clear form of it right now with this damn 60-minute statement, 60-minute interview statement where he says we misunderstood the dynamics of the supply chain. And I'm like, no, you didn't. If you did, you should have just watched The Uneducated Economist. He would have made it clear for you. Right? And there's no way. Like, the uneducated economist could not possibly have known this more than the Fed. That's what I guess I'm trying to get at, right? That's what I'm trying to say is like, there's no way that I am smart enough to call that out, saying that is not going to work as definitely as I did, and them not know that too. That's the delusional thinking, okay? That would be the delusional thinking right there. Go hit the like button. We got 219 people watching right now. You're getting information that you're not going to get anywhere else. Everybody believes that the Fed is like screwed up and doesn't know what they're doing. We know that they're doing it. We know that they're achieving their strategies. We have it all right here piled up on a passenger seat of a 99 Ford Explorer. Wow, look at that. We've got a jump and thumbs up right away. Okay. I'm lit up this morning, guys. Love this shirt. Okay, good morning. Hit the like button, guys. Good morning, Brody. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, thank you, Brody. Hell Nighter, good morning. Okay, no problem. Hey, Dishes, they want to keep rates the same until January 2025. Okay, casting arguments about the disappearance of the middle class as a category altogether. Does a middle class person have anything else they can do in light of the actions of the Fed besides not spend money? No, don't dive into luxuries. Earn as much money as you possibly can. Buy into... only take out good debt, which means that you're buying assets that are going to pay you if you take out any debt at all. Okay? Do not dive into luxuries. Earn as much money as you possibly can. And hope and pray that the complete collapse of the United States economy doesn't happen while you're still alive. That's the only thing you can possibly do. The Cantillon effect is going to separate the rich from the poor. The idea that you can go and have a regular job and get married and have kids and do all that other stuff, and you're going to do it off of a single income is gone. Completely gone. That is not going to take place. If you are not busting your ass, grinding, earning an incredible amount of money to separate yourself from the rest of the people out there and to get on the other side of the wedge that is being driven due to the new money coming into the system, there's literally nothing you can do. Okay? So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do out there, but there's nothing you can do to change the system is what I guess I'm saying. Right? So that's all there is you can do is earn as much money as you can, buy assets that pay you, and do not buy luxuries, right? And so that's, I mean, I don't know, like, hey, Brody, but then have, oops, got these broken glasses here I'll put on, okay. Where everyone trim install day over here. Oh, you putting trim in today? On a Saturday? Well, good for you. Working Saturdays. Doing the grind, man. All right, Simon, you should clip the audio of yourself reading the first line of the speech and set it as your text message receipt tone. Yeah, it's not even the first line in the speech. It's like, I don't know, it's like the fourth or fifth paragraph in that speech. So what are you thinking on the rate direction because of this? Well, I mean, that's just the thing. Okay, so the rate, everybody is confused about those interest rates, right? And that we have this inflation target of 2%. This is where everybody's missing it because it's not an inflation of 2% target. That has gone out the window. It's an average inflation rate over time. And in fact, if you go and read that damn speech again, because Brody loved this one too. When I said that I'm going to make John Williams wish he had never written this speech, I'm serious about that, right? Because he said it right in here. The second option is an average inflation targeting. Now, an average inflation rate, as opposed to a 2% target, is a very, very different form of like adjusting monetary policy to achieve their inflation target or their inflation like objective, right? Because it's no longer a target. See, it used to be when the Federal Reserve would go for a 2% average, or I'm sorry, a 2% target, what they would do is they would adjust their monetary policy to then try and achieve that target. So if the inflation was running low, they would try and make the economy more accommodating, and then therefore bring that inflation back up to the 2% target. If it was running over 2%, again, they would try to adjust monetary policy to make it more restrictive and come down to that 2% target. And then once they have achieved the target, try to maintain that target as best they can, letting bygones be bygones. So whatever happened, doesn't matter, going forward 2% target always, right? And so it's just like trying to maintain this, like, this even flow through it or something like that. But it doesn't work because the inflation can never stay in one spot. So it was just like very difficult for them to achieve the target, especially when it started to run persistently low. And this is where things like really started to get into trouble as the persistently low inflation uh, that had been taking place, that started creating an issue with inflation expectation also being persistently low, and that was the problem that he was describing, a persistently too low of an inflation expectation. So then they were like, okay, well, we can't go for this damn target anymore because it doesn't work, because every time we let the bygones be bygones, it's pulling down the future inflation expectations. So now we got to get inflation to run hot. And now back in 2018 and 19 and all the way up until basically the pandemic, I was pounding my fist along with a lot of other people who were listening at the time, right? Because they forget this, right? There was a lot of people at the time who was, because the Fed was saying we need to find inflation. We have an inflation expectation that's too low. And people were screaming then, where are you going to get the inflation? You have failed to achieve your inflation mandate. Now, a lot of people are out there going, oh no, if you look at the inflation from there, whatever, look at houses, look at cars. Okay. I believe it, right? Because I believe I bought a freaking expensive home, right? And it took everything to get it. The inflation that the Fed was looking at was persistently low. And we don't do monetary policy, right? Whether we hope, dream, wish, whatever we want, doesn't matter. They're the ones who are in charge of monetary policy, not us. We have to look at what they're looking at. They saw inflation that was running persistently low. Doesn't matter what we see. Right? Doesn't matter what the truth is. Doesn't matter what, whatever, like what we think it should be or that whatever, it's inconsequential. What does matter is that the Fed sees that there was a 2% inflation that was running persistently low. Right? And so now, instead of going for this target, they're going to make up for these shortfalls that they have. Right? And it's been running persistently low for a long time. So that when the inflation did kick in, right? And the pandemic was like causing the supply chain breakdown. Well, causing, right? Because it was a self-induced wound, really. That's what was taking place. But once the supply chain broke down, I was saying it then. I said, this is what's causing the inflation, right? I saw it clearly in lumber. I described it in lumber. I mean, like every single day there was another video that I was talking about, describing every element within the supply chain of lumber. And that was a very like accurate form of trying to get an understanding of what the rest of the economy was going to experience, but it wasn't going to all happen at the same time. And that was the problem, right? Because lumber is a very well-established supply, domestic, no need for anything foreign. We have a well-established lumber supply chain within this country, and it was, boom, reestablished just like that, right? So when it broke down, it was no problem bringing it back. Everything else that uses parts and pieces from the globe is going to have a very difficult time trying to come back into supply like lumber did. So when people said, you can't look at lumber and it's not the same as the rest of the economy. Yes, it is. It's the bullwhip effect that was taking place. Right? I can see it clearly. And, being able to call it out as long ago as I did. I mean, I made that video 2.5 years ago about how the supply chain was not going to come back and that inflation was going to run persistently high if the Federal Reserve was going to believe that the supply chain was going to come back. I mean, I said it in that video. I mean, I was clearly like saying this is BS. I don't know where the hell they come up with this idea. They are lying right then. I was calling them out as a liar back then. I'm calling them out as a liar right now. This is the credible threat. This is to cause inflation expectation to be persistently high. It's all part of their game, all right? And everybody is like literally helping them out by making videos saying that they made a mistake and that they don't know what they're doing. All right? I mean, if they believed what I believed, if everybody's following the Uneducated Economist, their policies would fail. They would fail, right? But they don't fail because everybody believes that they failed, and that's what's so counterintuitive. This whole thing, this whole theory, but once you go through it, it makes so much more sense. Right? Because there's no way. There's this there's no way they were going to get that inflation expectation back. There was no way they were going to have a monetary policy that could be operational. They were failing. They were failing miserably. And COVID absolutely saved them. The pandemic saved them in every way. And it's like scary to think like how well it worked. It's like I look back and I think to myself, I'm like, God, damn, you guys are good. I mean, I don't like you. I don't like the idea of a central bank. I'm I'm gold, silver, cryptos, whatever. I mean, let's get out of that, fiat currency stuff. But damn, they pulled it off incredibly well, And it's sad. Good morning. Ever check out Gregory Mannarino? I don't, guys. I literally, and this is one of the reasons why I don't, is because I find information like this and I don't like to seem like I'm countering the ideas or the theories or the beliefs or anything else that's going on out there. These people are incredibly intelligent, believe me. I mean, I've met them, I've listened to them, I've gone through their presentations, and it's like, it's mind-blowing some of the stuff that they have researched and come up with, right? But they don't see it from a working class point of view, and apparently I see it differently because of that, right? I don't have money to invest. I'm trying to get money to invest. I don't have businesses. I'm not politically affiliated. I'm not I don't do any of that stuff. I literally read up on monetary policies, try to study as much economic theory as I can, and I go to work. That's it. That's what I do. I'm not trying to convince somebody of a product that I'm trying to sell or anything, unless you're trying to get onto the memberships, which I do promote. Please join the members, because you're going to get live streams like this, only you get them in a much better fashion because there's only about 30 or 40 people who are within those live streams, and the discussions are incredible. Right? This is this information is not something you're getting anywhere else. This is why, unless you happen to work the supply chain at the time and studied macroeconomics and didn't fall for this is Biden's fault, right? I wouldn't even know. I don't even know how to describe it as Biden's fault. I've never heard a single thing that this dude said, so I couldn't possibly say this is how I can accuse him of it, because I wouldn't know, because I don't even know. I had no clue of what that dude thinks or says, because I've never listened in my entire life. Not one thing, right? I mean, unless it was some joke video or something that popped up. But I've never listened to anything seriously that has ever come from that guy. So I wouldn't know if he broke the economy or fixed it or not, because I don't believe any of that, right? I believe what I believe, coming from the Federal Reserve's monetary policy strategies that I have studied and researched and dedicated the last 5 years to. All right, you're right on with the Fed ongoing for that 2% neutral rate on their previous speeches, where they had hit the zero inflation bound being too low, so they stimulated the economy by later raising rates. Yep. First time watching live. Any thoughts on the sale of U.S. steel? Individual, right now, I am so focused in on, this monetary policy strategies and what it is that has taken place within the perception of the people out there, and the idea of this cutting of interest rates and how that is actually impacting the economy right now, even though the Fed has chosen not to do anything yet but sit on their hands. That's what I'm more focused in on. Right now, you are going to see a lot of businesses fail. There's going to be a lot of them. Right? Over the course of the next 6 months, year, I don't know how long this is going to take, but we're going to go into a liquidity crisis, and you're going to see corporations fail like mad, right? This is the zombies getting their heads knocked off. I talked about that a long time ago, that once the interest rates begin to rise, and that these corporations who can no longer make their debt payments are going to start failing, and you're seeing it now, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about the whole banking crisis that's taken place and what it is that the future banking system might look like. And we're going to review Michelle Bowman's speech tomorrow around 9 o'clock Pacific time here. But you're going to have to be a member if you're going to want to watch that video, right? If you're going to want to be part of that live stream. And it's $1 a month. It's nothing to you, but it's everything to me because I put a lot of work and research into it. So, we're going to figure out exactly what it is that the Federal Reserve is thinking. You're going to be able to call out things like I'm calling out right now, that I called out 2.5 years ago, right? And you're going to be able to use your job, your current 9-to-5 job, whatever it is that you are doing. You can recognize macroeconomic forces that are taking place within every single day that you are operating, and you will be able to do a much better job of analyzing the current situation than some dude up there who's making a video who had to wait for the information to come inside of a data sheet. You get this stuff in real time. That's how I'm able to call out a lot of the stuff that I am. Right? And there's it's so amazing to actually be able to do that. When you have connections within every form of the supply chain on a particular industry, and everybody out there on the mainstream media is giving excuses to why, and you're like, everybody's delusional. It gives you a much more confidence to be able to go through this material and say the world is delusional, because they are, right? The mainstream media is pure propaganda, and I don't know how else to describe it, but that's I use the mainstream media a lot to come up with articles, but I usually am pulling stuff out of it, saying, hey, look at what's going on here, and then I use my theories that I have accumulated over the years to give my opinion about a particular thing. But trying to use mainstream news as information gathering, it's going to be very difficult to understand what's going on out there, because that's not where that's a misguiding information, All right. Welcome, Manic Bear. Yeah, the bond market better than I do, but the way out of all this is to boycott bonds. No, there's no way out. I'm sorry. Carl, there's no way out, bro. There's no way out. It's a one-way street, right? It's the dive into luxuries that separated the rich from the poor. It drove out the domestic manufacturing. It's driving in ever-increasing amounts of foreign imports. No matter how hard you try, you're never going to bring the domestic manufacturing back in a way that's going to be competitive. So it's just you can slow down the effects, but ultimately there is a one-way street into luxuries and then eventual demise, where everybody falls into poverty, right? The best thing you can do is try to protect yourself from that sort of situation by having hard assets like gold and silver and crypto on a lesser extent. Even the idea of owning property may not be so great during an economic collapse, especially if it's one of social collapse and governmental collapse or something like that, because who's going to help you protect your land other than maybe your neighbor, and then now you're in a real tough situation, because that's not fun at all, right? So nobody wants to experience that. There's no way out. There's literally no way out. The only thing that you can do is try to make the best opportunity that you can for yourself in the current situation the way it is, and don't try and think about how it needs to be fixed or how it's broken, but how it is that you can actually advance through this, right? Because that's really what needs to be done. Gregory Mannarino is depressing. He's insightful, but I find those videos hard to watch. I watched a lot of Gregory Mannarino I watched a lot of him prior, just before actually I starting my YouTube channel. Like I watched a lot of people back in the day before I started my YouTube channel. And I mean, I don't think I've watched his videos in quite a few years, so I couldn't tell you what anything that, his opinions or anything else, because I haven't watched anybody. I've been focusing on my stuff, right? And I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm better or whatever. I did like I okay, here's the problem that I found is that I listened to a lot of Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff was by far my ultimate like economist out there. I listened to more of him than anybody, and I have to give him credit for pretty much giving me the insight into the economy, into the Federal Reserve that I have, even though I sound so much different than he does, right? But it's true, right? I mean, I have to give him credit. He is the one, right? I listen to more of him than anybody. But I found when I listened to him a lot, I would start sounding like him, like I was parroting, a lot of what I was hearing. And so as I was listening to these other economists, and I would sit there and try and make a video, and all of a sudden I said to myself, that sounded just like that video that you just watched. So are you giving your opinions? Or are you giving somebody else's opinion? Are you just regurgitating something else that somebody else said? Or are you actually diving into this information? Are you digging it out for yourself? Are you trying to understand it on a level that is like unique just to you so that you can actually operate within this economy and not by suffering to the opinions of somebody else, but actually be able to form your own opinions on everything that's going on? And I realized, no, I wasn't. I wasn't doing that, right? So that's why I didn't want to. They're like my friends. Mark is like my friend. I mean, I shook his hand, we talked, we hung out like at the Rebel Capitalist. He's a great guy. But I'm that view that of how Jerome Powell screwed up, made a mistake, admitted to his mistake, is part of the credible threat. It's part of the credible threat theory that I have been trying to explain for years now. And everybody's falling for it. And the Federal Reserve is giving high fives in the background saying, look at that. We are totally saving our inflation expectations, right? All that crap that you hear out there, it's not a mistake. They have positioned it exactly the way they want it. And everybody is falling for it, right? It's like, I mean, I've explained it in so many videos. I mean, I can't you can either go through all my videos, and study each one of them, or you can, like I said, join the live streams and ask the questions of the, you know, 364 people. My goodness, look at all these people up in here in the live stream. This is awesome. Thank you for joining in this morning. Hey, go and hit that like button. We got 116 likes right now. We should have that up to 216 in the next 5 minutes. Go hit that like button. All right. Economic interpretation is very personal. It really is. And that's why, and here's the other thing. The position that you take from the information that you have taken in is going to dictate the life that you are going to end up with the outcome of your life. And this is really, really difficult to really explain. For example, I'm gonna try and break this down into this might be like oversimplified, but I think it's gonna make a lot of sense, right? And if you think about it like this. Imagine I have two neighbors, one on each side of me, right? And one of them is like hardcore political affiliated, goes into watching a lot of politics and, looking at all the debates, looking at all the policy changes, blah, 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 right? And is very affected by it, right? He has businesses, he has all kinds of he's in the community, he's active, he's really has a lot of things that he does where this information that he is getting from this political mindset is very much involved in his life. The other guy, he goes out to his acre of property and he cultivates flowers. That's it. That's what he does all day. Listens to music, listens to classical music on his headphones, and he cultivates flowers all day. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, right, both of them have experienced the same environment, right? I mean, they're they live on each side of me. One of them is completely stressed out and occupied by the changes that happen within the political environment. The other one does not care, right? Nothing changes about his life. The next day, he's going to go out and cultivate flowers the same day that he did before. He conditioned his life to exist in such a way that politics do not interfere with him. Right? Now, granted, if bombs fell from the sky, that would be very much different. And there is changes to business and all kinds of stuff that will affect him. But ultimately, the day-to-day life of stress of how it is that he's going to conduct himself does not, the politics don't affect that. Right? So it's all about the meaning that you are giving the information that is coming in. Right? If the meaning of the information that is coming in is that the Federal Reserve has screwed up, then you will have positioned yourself in a way that has belief that the Federal Reserve has screwed up. And so therefore, everything that is now going on is in the idea that the Federal Reserve has screwed up. So every decision you are making with your life and all that is going, because this is the meaning that you have given it, right? I didn't believe that the Fed screwed up. I believe that they are doing it on purpose. Now, the outcome of what we do with our decision making may be different because of that meaning that we have given it. Now, right or wrong or different doesn't really matter, right? Because, again, are you cultivating flowers and the information doesn't mean anything to you, right? Because, like, you could have all the information and you're like, okay, I'm going to go plant my flowers, right? You know, it's just like, I don't know why I would have that information. It doesn't do anything for me. Where the other guy goes, man, I need all this information because I got all this stuff going on in my life. You see the difference inside of this? This is why it is so important to understand that the information and the content that you are bringing in, the data that you are bringing in, the meaning that you are giving it is so critically important to the outcome that you will experience. All right? And I don't know how I can explain that any more than that, you know? All right. Let's see, because we cannot really boycott the Federal Reserve directly, so we have to affect the treasuries because they are linked. All right. I'm going to cruise down here because I know we have a bunch of comments, so I'm going to get a little bit closer. Wow, look at all these comments. Okay. All right, let's see here. I liked your advice on conspiracy theories. They're all true, so what? Hey, you know, I mean, I was somebody who had dove into some really deep, dark stuff when it came into conspiracy theories, and it made me very unhappy and very depressed, right? And I told myself after I came out of that, that when I started following information again, to just follow the money, right? Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about all the New World Order takeover and all the other, you know, stuff that's, you know, out there that's going to completely destroy your life. Okay, great. Okay, heard it before. Like, I believe it. I believe it all. Like, I really do. I mean, I believe it. I believe the stuff that's sprayed in the skies, and I believe all the stuff. I believe it all. Like, I mean, I'm not denying any of that stuff. I'm to the point now that I just don't care. I really don't care about that stuff. What I care about is the money because it's the only thing that I can actually deal with in my own life. And that's what I find important. And so when I started following the money and I started realizing that there is a much different story that is being told behind the scenes than is being told out there in the mainstream media and being told amongst the people out there, and especially being told amongst politics, they are absolutely delusional. Right? Once I started realizing all this stuff, I knew there was, you know, it's changed, right? And that's what I focus in on. This is one of the reasons why I can almost call out, I can predict so much stuff now, but it's not me predicting it. It's me just having a better understanding of how the Federal Reserve is working their strategy, right? That's all it really is. I mean, it's not like, you know, I'm some genius who understands economics. It's not that at all, right? It's just that I've just kept pace with the strategy. I'm like, okay, let's figure this thing out, because they're not really explaining it in the media and nobody else seems to really want to be taking it on, right? But yet there's, you know, a clear and definite strategy that has taken place. You know, you know what the Fed was really worried about in 2018, besides the inflation expectation being persistently low, right? I mean, they said it several times in many speeches, and I don't know if anybody could even name one of them, let alone the three that were described inside of this speech. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. There's three main global trends to account for the bulk of the decline of the neutral interest rate. One is demographics. Populations are aging as people are living longer and birth rates have fallen. So they have an older population, and that's one of the problems that they were facing, right? Three main global trends appear to account for the bulk of the decline of the neutral interest rate. Now, I'll explain the neutral interest rate in here in a second. But this is the problem that they had, was that this neutral interest rate was low, and it was because they had this aging population. Now, I didn't really keep track of any of the numbers when it came to the COVID thing because I just didn't pay attention to the mainstream media when it came to that. I basically ignored COVID in every way, shape, and form if I could. In every way. I mean, I just, on the side of this, the obvious that impacted me, I did not participate in any way. Unless I was standing on private property, then I would wear a mask because I understand property rights and I understand what it is to be on somebody's private property. And if they request that I put a mask on and I want to be on their property, I'm going to abide by their rules, right? Because it's their private property and I am a constitutionalist who respects that, right? I don't walk into a store and tell them how I'm going to behave on their private property. That's not how this works. I can behave how I want on the streets as much as the law will allow, all right? Or on my own property, I get to behave however I want. But I don't get to go on somebody else's property and tell them how I get to be on their property, right? I get to be however I want on the street. I can't be however I want on somebody's private property. That's not right. And that's where a lot of people got confused. You know, I mean, I don't have to wear a mask. Yeah, you do. If you're going to be on private property, you do. If you want to be on the private property, you do. If you don't, you don't. You're right. You can go stand out on the street. You know, I mean, that's simple as that. I mean, I don't see how that's hard to understand, you know, and I had to explain that to so many people in the store, but I did it much more politely. Okay, but the aging population, right? So that was one of the problems. The second is the productivity growth, which has slowed around the world. Now, this is a very interesting one. The only way that I can really describe this in a good fashion that makes it really kind of, again, it's probably oversimplified, is that if you were a plumber looking to start a business inside of a town that's already full of plumbers, how do you grow that business? Like, if you add to it, it's actually going to slow growth down because people are going to have less business to do. So when you think about the mass devastation to the economy that had taken place, like the mass hacking of the trimming of the fat, so to speak, like all the unproductive manufacturing and operations that were taking place, this is going to at some point turn around and start turning into much more growth, right? And that's probably what I am anticipating is going to be much more clearly stated into the future once we start understanding how the productivity growth that has slowed around the world reverses, right? So once that reverses and we get a better understanding of what it is that had happened during that time, but that's essentially what I'm thinking has taken place, is that they knocked the knees out of all the unproductive operations that were happening out there so that there would be room to grow again. All right. Now, this is the third major problem that the Federal Reserve was facing prior to the COVID pandemic. The third is the heightened demand for safe and liquid assets, which has led to a wider wedge between yields on safe government securities or central bank reserves and yields on riskier assets such as corporate bonds. That is a very confusing statement. And most people, when they hear that, they're like, what in the world did I just hear? And I totally understand that too, because when the first time I read that, I was just like, what? It took me like a while to try and understand what it was that he was like, what John was referring to. But once you kind of get it makes a lot more sense. And again, I'm probably going to oversimplify this a little bit, but it does make it a lot clearer. The problem that was being faced is that there's the safe and liquid asset of the U.S. Treasuries. Now, regardless of what anybody believes out there is nothing out there that quite matches what a U.S. Treasury can do. It is by far the most liquid asset, meaning that if you want to sell it, there's going to be a buyer out there. And so it's almost as good as cash. And then on top of it, it pays a little bit of interest. So not only does it pay a little bit of interest, it's also as good as cash. It could practically be used as cash. And in a lot of ways, in a world trade kind of aspect, it does get used as cash. And so the U.S. Treasuries are like by far the most popular asset to hold that is guaranteed to pay, no chance of default because the United States has a printing press to pay it, right? So understanding kind of like the value of a U.S. Treasury, even though a lot of people probably wouldn't give it that kind of value, understanding that is very critical to the next part of it, because what they are talking about next is like corporate debt, right? So all these corporations out there who also issue debt, they were facing a problem in which that the difference between the yields, the interest rates that are paid to the investor for purchasing these bonds, the yields on the treasuries, the U.S. government, was really low, and the corporate debt was really high. Well, comparatively, it was high. There was a wider wedge between the two. And so now, if you can imagine, when it comes time to stimulating the economy, now again, like we could theorize on a whole another part of just this, but I'm going to try to explain it so that it makes a little bit more sense. And that if you could imagine that when it comes time to stimulating the economy by buying into the U.S. Treasuries and lowering interest rates, this would bring down the U.S. bonds, or I'm sorry, bring down the corporate bonds as well, because what would end up happening is that the yields on the Treasuries coming down would then have the investors looking for yield, right? So if the yields come down here, they have to go, oh man, I have to take on some risk, and then they would start moving up into the corporate debt, right? But if the yields on these things were already really wide, then you would have trouble lowering them enough to get people to go into those corporate debts. Now, if that yield was very narrow, right, they were really close together, and then you drop the interest rates on the treasuries, well, all of a sudden, now you have investors going, oh man, I've lost my ability to get yield out of the treasuries. Where do I go? And they start moving into corporate debt, which then starts to finance the corporations, right? So do you guys kind of understand how that works? So if there's this wide wedge, they have less opportunity to do that. If there's a narrow wedge, then that gives them more space, more scope of operations or something. Now, that's just one of a bigger idea of how that works. But really, those are the three main problems that the Federal Reserve was facing, prior to the pandemic. And so if you take in those considerations, those three main global trends for the decline of the neutral interest rate, the older population, right, the productivity growth, and then those yields on those corporate debts being too wide of a wedge between the treasuries and the corporations. Well, now that the yields have risen dramatically, they've caught up quite quickly to the corporations' debt. All these problems have been solved, or being solved, right? I mean, am I missing it? I mean, it's just like, they said these are the problems. That's what they were facing prior to the three main global trends appear to be the problem. Okay, so now the neutral interest rate. This is the other part of it. So now we have to think in, it's not just that there's these problems. These problems were affected by the neutral interest rate. Now, the neutral interest rate, this is the interest rate that is neither accommodating nor restricting the Federal Reserve. It's neutral, right? So if they have their Fed funds rate above the neutral interest rate, then they're going to be restrictive. If they have it below the neutral interest rate, they're going to be accommodating. If they're at neutral, boom, it's just neutral. They're neither accommodating nor restricting the economy. Now, the neutral interest rate moves, right? So there's no set point on this neutral interest rate. And even in the speech, he goes on to say, today, the low neutral interest rates reflects the culmination of trends extending back 25 years. A quarter century ago, a typical estimate of the neutral interest rate in the United States was 2 to 2.5%, consistent with historic averages over the preceding half century. Since then, however, there has been a clear downtrend in the neutral interest rate in the United States and other advanced economies, and current estimates range from 0 to 1.5%. They don't know exactly where this thing is, but they know it was really low. So now dropping the Fed funds rate below the neutral interest rate became ineffective for stimulating the economy because of the low neutral interest rate, right? It's just too low. So now here's the problem. They need to get that neutral interest rate to rise. It's rising right now. Right? All the inflation expectations and the belief that the Federal Reserve had screwed up started raising the neutral interest rate. It started causing all the interest rates to rise. So now what ends up happening is the neutral interest rate starts moving ever increasingly closer to the Fed funds rate. Guess what? As it moves closer to the Fed funds rate and the Fed is staying still, that becomes less restrictive. It's one of the reasons why we see such a robust economy. As soon as the Fed stopped raising interest rates, the perception was that interest rates weren't going to go up any further than this. The neutral interest rate kept rising. This is making it less restrictive on the economy as we continue on. Nobody sees this. Nobody really talks about this stuff, right? It's clear. It's not clear. You have to understand it, but it's like, once you understand it, it's clearly stated, clear as mud, but whatever. See, once you see this stuff, it's like you can't unsee it. That's the problem with it is. And then when I see things like taking place within the social medias or even on the mainstream media, it's just like I can't unsee it. It's just like once I see the credible threats, once I see the average inflation rate targeting as opposed or not 2% targeting, but going for average inflation rate over time, you can't see it any other way. All right, guys, 351. I think I'm starting to bore you. Let's get some good questions in here. Wow, look at all these comments. My goodness. All right, we're up to 183 likes. We're almost to that 200 mark. Let's get there, guys. Okay. Everyone I know that took the jab is fine. Yeah, everyone I know that took it too seems to be all right. There was a couple of people that I heard about getting sick, and then one guy I know has a big lump on his arm that he says is still there. It's like it never went away. And so, yeah. After they tried to fire my wife, half of their staff quit and remaining ones are angry they took it. The Vax cards could just be printed on cardstocks anyway. Okay, I'm going to let you in on this one right here, okay? This is a bit personal, but I think it's actually, by this point it doesn't really matter anymore. My oldest boy wanted to go take a trip to Iceland, right? He had an opportunity to go there, and so I told him, hey man, you're gonna have to, you have to go and get the jab or whatever if you want to go to Iceland. He says, Dad, I really want to go to Iceland. I'm like, well, you're old enough now. You're gonna have to be making these decisions. I don't like, I gave him all my concerns and everything else about it. Okay, dude, so I took him down, and I'm kind of a little bit not a little hesitant. Like, I don't want to do it, but this is like, I'm trying to, my boy wants to go to Iceland, right? So anyhow, so we go in there and they give me a piece of paper. They say, here, you have to fill this thing out, right? And so I just give it right over to my kid. I'm like, here you go, fill that thing out, right? I didn't even read pretty much what was on there. I mean, it's obviously, the information, your name and stuff, right? But I didn't read it, right? I didn't read anything that was on there, and I don't know what my boy put on that piece of paper. I have no idea. And I pulled out my wallet and I said, how much does it cost? And the lady says, oh no, we charge the insurance. Your insurance will pay for it. And I said, I don't have my insurance information, so I'll just pay for it. How much is it? And she says, no, the government will pay for it. And I said, oh, that's okay. I don't want the government to pay for it. I want to pay for it. I said, I don't have my insurance. I have my wallet in my hand. I don't have my insurance. And I want to pay cash for this. She says, no, well, the government will pay for it. And I said, are you telling me right now there's no way that I can pay for this shot right now? And she says, yeah, that's what I'm telling you. There's no way you can pay for it. And I'm like, oh. So I put my wallet back and I said, I don't have any of that information on there, right? And when I signed it, I literally signed it with I think 2 straight lines. Like, I just put 2 dashes on the signature. And so my boy goes back, gets the shot. She comes out. She hands me a card, and she says, okay, be sure and put his name on there. And I'm like, what? And she was just like, yeah, he has to put his name on there. And I'm like, wait a minute here. I said, wait a minute. I said, you didn't check my ID. You have no idea who I am. You have no idea who he is. You have no idea that he's related to me. This is completely voluntary. There is nothing here that is documenting any kind of legitimacy behind any of this. I didn't say this to her, but this is going through my head. And I'm like, this is crap. I could have pulled this kid off of the street and said, hey, man, you want to earn $100? Come with me, right? And said, boom, here, get the card. Thank you. Here you go. Go to Iceland. Right? I mean, that literally could have happened in front of me. I mean, I'm sitting there watching that happen. I'm like, this is complete. This is absolute. This is crap. This is complete crap. I am not falling for this. This is not legitimate at all. I don't know what the hell is going on here, but this cannot possibly be right. So that was my experience with it, and that's about as close as I got to anything about, with that. And yeah, it was just like, I couldn't believe it when she handed me that and says, yeah, put his name on there. And I'm like, I put my own name on her? Like I could put my name on there. You know, I mean, I could. I mean, all right, moving on. Okay. I have insurance and still can't afford a doctor. Yeah, I have catastrophic insurance. I have high deductible insurance, which basically means that I don't have insurance either. Right? Because like I th- I forget how many thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that I have to spend every year in order to get to in order to achieve the deductible. It's just like there's no point in even having insurance. Like, I mean, I guess if something catastrophic was to take place, then it would be cool to have it. But other than that, it's just like there's no point. I mean, it's just like I operate without. I mean, I pay cash for pretty much. I mean, I have to pay out of pocket for pretty much all my health insurance every year. So it's just like know, it's like we have by far the cheapest. But I shouldn't complain because we are at least. I mean, I work at a lumber yard, and we are literally like the last lumber yard in the world, that offers insurance to their employees. So I shouldn't complain, and the whole family, I mean, too. So it's not. I shouldn't call it too bad. All right. Bogus bureaucracy again. All right. All nighter. Is that a good when signing the certified letters? Oh. Working on the garden instead of watching the Super Bowl this weekend. Oh, Super Bowl. What's that? All right. I'm seeing a lot of people wearing those new Apple headsets in public. All right. Food costs double. Rents are sky high. Crime is out of control in some areas. Wars, multiple countries, and a bunch of stuff I forgot. Oh, well, I'll keep thinking about that stuff, I guess. I don't know. All right. Talk about corporations failing. Nvidia is worth as much as China stock. I'm sure this will turn just fine. All right. Well, with 370 of you watching, there's got to be some questions about some of the stuff that's going on here, at least throughout this monetary policy theory that I have been studying. I mean, I don't know what's going to come next, except for the idea of the average inflation. That is going to be so confusing for people because they're going to see the inflation come down. They're going to keep talking about the 2%. They're going to make believe that they understand what a 2% average inflation is, or that 2% inflation over time. And it's going to be this weird misconception that everybody has from it. In fact, already, even though I try to explain it in my videos, I still get a lot of people who are like, saying that the Fed is just making it up as they go along. And I actually kind of had that same thing going on until I found the correct information, in which that they are looking back in time into what day it was that they did achieve a 2% average inflation rate, considering the amount of inflation that has taken place just recently. And now that is really confusing to understand within itself. But once you kind of grasp that, then it makes a whole lot more sense on what it is that the Federal Reserve is attempting to do with their average inflation rate over time. Because if you can imagine the deviations, the shortfalls, right, in inflation, and making up for that, right? So now we had shortfalls from quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? The great financial crisis, all this money printing, mass amounts of it was supposed to cause. Oh, hey, thanks for the super chat. I'll take a look at that here in just a second. All this massive money printing that was supposed to cause this hyperinflation scenario, and I know because I was one of them who was screaming hyperinflation, dumped every dime I had in silver, believing that's what was going to take place, and Max Kaiser didn't help, with the crash JP Morgan buy silver campaign, which was a total pump and dump scheme. Now, at that time, inflation failed to achieve the 2% inflation. It did get a couple of times, it did go over it, but for the most part, it didn't get there, right? So now, when we experience the inflation that we had, and everybody says that the Fed lost control, they are actually incorporating this current high inflation that we have experienced and using that with the past shortfalls. And if they look back from the current inflation that we have today, or actually the document that I was looking at was from a few months ago, it was about 6, 7 months ago. But the inflation that we were experiencing back then, say 7 months ago, right, which is not too far off, if you incorporate the average, it took 15 years back. So if you can imagine all the inflation that we had experienced just recently that was running above the 2%, and you average it in with all the shortfalls from inflation that we experienced from the past, you would have to go back 15 years in order to find that 2% average. And this is important to understand because people said that the Fed is just making it up, that they don't know, that there's no real metric or any way of figuring it out, because they said that there is no metric for figuring this out. But they do have a formula, right, of where is the 2% average. The question is, if we incorporate today's average or today's inflation, the hot inflation that we have experienced, and we take in the average of the cold inflation that from the past, and we try to find that 2% somewhere in the back, because it's back there somewhere. We don't know exactly where it is. Once we have established that, where is it? It was about 15 years ago, right? So if inflation ran hotter, then that 15 years would maybe more like 12 years or something like that. Now, this is important to understand, because if inflation continues to run hot, that's what's going to happen is that 2% is going to start moving closer and closer to our current timeline, right? It won't be 15 years ago. It might be 12 years ago. It might get to 10 years ago, and it's eventually going to reach a point in which that it meets that inflection, where you can't find any moment any closer to the current time in which that you are going to be at 2%. Any closer in the timeline, and you're going to start moving above the 2% inflation. Right, the average inflation. This is I don't know if you guys are following me on this, but this is important to understand, because I'm sure this is how it works. It's backward looking average inflation until it meets that inflection point. And at that point, it becomes forward looking average inflation, because now they're going to have to adjust monetary policy to make sure that the average inflation rate does not move above the 2%. Right? And that's what's going to end up happening, because it's going to start moving back out on the timeline again in order to incorporate the shortfalls. So now, as this timeline moves closer and it meets that inflection point, this is where the Federal Reserve, I think, would want to have inflation right at 2%. Like if inflation is at 2% and this inflection point of inflation at 2% meet at the exact same time, they can flip to inflation targeting and forward inflation, average inflation targeting, right? This stuff is very difficult to understand, but it's part of the Fed's strategy. I mean, this is what they're thinking. I mean, I know because of the document that came out of the San Francisco. Let me see, where is it? Is that it? No, it's not it. All right, I don't know where it is right now. But there's a document coming out of the San Francisco Federal Reserve Bank, average inflation, and they do a great job of describing what average inflation is within that document. They talk not only about backward-looking average inflation, but also forward-looking average inflation. And there's two different ways that they are figuring this out. And it's important to understand, because this is the new way that they are doing monetary policy. I can't find it right now, but I'm sure you guys believe me. Let's go read that super chat. Wow, it's back up there a ways. All right, here's my class tuition, Simon. Thanks, brother. Yeah, you bet, Johnny. Thank you so much for that $20, man. I really appreciate the support. You know, this is again, I don't know where you guys are, who's diving into it like this and busting it down and presenting the information on a level that, is that it? Fed's new inflation targeting policy seeks to maintain well-anchored inflation expectations. No, that's a different one. Anyway, I got so many documents in here. All right, all-nighter. Okay, brought up good points in the Tucker Carlson interview. Buy Dogecoin, wait, be rich, enjoy. All right. Let's see here. No heart attack shot for me, or carbon dioxide mask. Yeah, it was terrible. I hated it. I did not like it at all, and I agree, it made me feel very messed up, and I was thankful that I didn't have to wear it anymore. But I wanted to work. I wanted the job, right? I was on private property, so if a tax can't be paid in what's being taxed, it's not legit. Only dollars can discharge tax, so only dollars can be taxed. Remember, they're Federal Reserve notes, meaning they own them. 15 years ago takes us back to the great financial crisis of 2008. Yeah, in fact, hold on here. Let me see if my computer fires up. I don't know if it's kind of cold out here. I don't know if the battery is still charged. I'll read it right. I'll tell you right where the document is, and show you right where I found that information about that, like that idea, that inflection point, because this is something that I really think is going to be like very. I don't think anybody's going to talk about that. In fact, I know that that's not going to be brought up at all. I'm going to be the only one who's going to be, and it's going to be such a misunderstood thing. Like it already is. Like people are already assuming, they come up with these numbers on where they think inflation is and what the average is and how long and based on a year and all this other stuff. They're wrong. They're all wrong. It's just like, they're just talking garbledygook because it doesn't mean anything, to come up with some idea that how long inflation is or the average inflation is, or coming up with this timeline for it, because that doesn't exist. There's no metric for figuring out average inflation over time. Jerome Powell has said it in his speeches here. Let me see. Yeah, I got it. My computer is not. The mouse doesn't want to operate because it's too cold. I don't know. Let me see if it warms up a little bit, but I'll find the document. It's from the Richmond Fed. And it's basically talking about the average inflation and how they figure it out. And there is a section inside of there in which that they do talk about the inflection, or that at least that past, like how far back it is, and they refer to it anyway. They give a date on it. I believe it's 15 years ago. My computer's just not going to operate. I'm going to have to let it warm up maybe. All right. If he is spending millions and billions in military funding, technically he is making it worse. Visit freedomlawschool.org to see how lawfully not pay taxes. Yeah, I gotta pay my taxes. Not a lot of people do that. Not paying taxes is unconventional, and other aspects of life must be switched to unconventional as well. My groceries cost $60 more a week for the same food. A lot of sensationalism going around. Binance is dropping all private cryptocurrencies like Monero. They're scared. Once retired, taxes should be obsolete. Good morning. Oh, Tahan. Yeah, Tahan really likes the channel here. Good morning, gorgeous. It's been a minute since I've watched your show, and I have to say to you that Powell is not going to cut anything. That's it. That's all. That's not going to happen. No cuts. Deja vu. How do you think boomers eat? All right. What's going? What's Oh, here, I'm looking at my glasses. Why do I keep taking those things off? They don't fit because they're broken. All right. What's going on at our border is a huge economic issue. I wish deja vu. Okay, taxes are already optional. Make them obsolete. Regarding masks, I've enjoyed the drama and the pageantry of it all. Got to feel like surgeon or a Japanese feller. You know what I liked about it is that I like to talk to myself, and nobody saw me doing that when I had the mask on. So I could kind of say whatever I wanted. Oh, what is going on over there? My boy is chasing something. What is he chasing? He's chasing a little dog. Huh. Anyway, it's with the neighbor kid, so I guess they're trying to catch that little dog for the neighbor. Oh well. Okay, sorry guys, got interrupted there. Parenting from a distance. Anyhow, average inflation goes back 15 years, and the Fed funds has been essentially zero in that time. From either the rate should be zero, there is little correlation between inflation and interest rates. Essential workers went through hell during the pandemic. Thanks for your service. Yeah, both my wife and I both had essential jobs. Simon, do you think Powell gets removed? I don't care. Like, to be honest with you, the removal of Powell is inconsequential to the outcome. I mean, he is nothing more than a spokesperson for the FOMC. He doesn't really have any kind of real authority over monetary policy in any way. Removing him is inconsequential to the outcome. Like, even the idea of it is like almost an ignorant one when I hear like future politicians saying that they want to remove him for the benefit of the economy or the Fed or monetary policy or something like that, is literally like saying, I want somebody else to tell me the story. Right? I mean, it's just like that's literally how it comes down. It's just like it's. I mean, it won't do anything. That's the problem. Like, you got to change the 12 members of the FOMC and the 5 alternates. What difference does it make? Nothing. I mean, other than somebody else is going to be telling you what the story is. That's it. I mean, I guess if you don't like to hear Powell's voice and you want to hear somebody else's voice instead, then maybe we should switch them out. But outside of the tone and the sound of the speech, I don't know what difference that the content is going to make. It's not. It won't do anything. Powell is nothing. The only reason why I even address him is because he was the one who was speaking at the 60 Minutes meeting, right? And it's not him lying, it's the FOMC lying. He speaks for the FOMC. So whatever words that are coming out of his mouth, that's what the FOMC is. And you know that those questions were reviewed ahead of time. Those he didn't answer that on the fly. Like, they wanted that content out there. They wanted people to believe whatever the hell it was that he was saying. Yeah, this thing is just not working. All right. That's the trick. Wearing things until they break. Never buy new clothes unless they need to. I do, like, see, that's just the thing. I had always worn really ratty old clothes and stuff like that. And I wanted to feel better about things. And so, wearing new clothes is actually nice, right? But I take care of my clothes, right? I mean, I don't go through them. I don't have a bunch of them. I just, wear the appropriate clothes for the time. Like, if if I'm painting, then I wear clothes that I've already painted in. All right, get out of the vehicle and help, Simon. What are you talking about, Benny? I am helping. This is helping. All right. Putin said the dollar was damaged when the U.S. sanctions other countries. He also talked about the BRICS nations and how the trade was done outside of the dollar. All I could do was think about your video. Yeah. I mean, appreciate it. What now, Chris? This is something that, like, this is something that is really difficult to try and explain so simply, right? That it's not as scary of an event that a lot of people are making it out to be. When it comes to, like, the BRICS nations issuing out a new currency or even trying to operate outside of the United States dollar, it is going to be a very difficult thing to, like, take over. Right? I'm not saying that it isn't happening. Like, it's happening. It's happening. But the thing is that it's always been happening. It's just to what scale has it been happening on? When all of a sudden you start getting a lot of news articles and people, like, throwing it in your face. Oh man, look at all this trade that's being done outside of the dollar. There was a time when there was less trade done in the dollar than there is now. Right? And right now, if you were to look at second place to the dollar, it is such a distant second. It is so far off in the distance, like, where the hell are you? It's just like, you're not even close. So there's nothing that's operating like the United States dollar is. So when I hear about the concerns about it, it is concerning in a way. Like, you think, wow, man, that's actually happening out there. And at some point, it'll probably be pretty significant. But as far as, like, me trying to conduct myself in a way that I'm taking in that information that says, like, man, this outcome is going to come from this, I don't see it, right? The Cantillon effect and the way that the system fails means that the U.S. treasuries themselves will have to be abandoned. Like, people would literally not want those anymore. That's going to be our new money coming in. If that new money is not coming in the form of U.S. Treasury sales, then we are going to start doing things that are going to force the new money in. And mainly that's going to be through blowing things up, right? So I'm kind of more looking at like China, because they're the ones who are suffering through this right now. You can see the massive deflation that's happening within their nation. And if they don't figure out a way to get new money in, then they are going to start getting very, very angry. And they're really not going to have much choice outside of starving to death than to fight. And that's going to be a very difficult situation for a lot of people to be in. How far into the future that is, I don't know. To what extent, I don't know. Like, is that going to be bloody fighting with bullets or cyber or something? I don't know how that looks, right? But it's going to be something that they have to do because the new money is not coming in. And if the new money doesn't come in, that means they're going to suffer into poverty and misery and failure and death and destruction and all the other stuff that comes with it. The same thing that every single nation has ever faced in the history of time, if you just go back and you look at it, right? All these like everybody wants to like give excuses and reasons and all this other stuff to why these nations have risen and fallen, but ultimately it was the rise in power from new money coming into the system that got them to dive into luxuries, was eventually started bringing in the foreign production and driving out the domestic manufacturing. And unless you brought new money in through war efforts or outright thievery, then I mean that was it. It was over. I have clothes from 20 years ago that I still wear with style. Yeah. Same for the president. Did I get another super chat? Let's go find that real quick. Hey, right on. What now, Chris? $4.99. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you guys for being here. We got 320 people watching right now with 247 likes. Thank you so much for hitting that like button. As you hit that like button, the algorithm picks up the video and sends it around for more people to join in. I don't understand. Oh, Benny. Okay. I like Benny. I really do. He comments a lot and he gives me a hard time. And I think Benny is trying to just kind of guide me onto like the straight and narrow. But he gives me a hard time. All right, let's read this. I don't understand how you have such a great recall of the finance stuff, but forgot what you said 2 minutes ago. All-nighter knows why that happens. All right, BRICS currency will never come about. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that it wouldn't never come about. I just have a very difficult time understanding how it's going to take over. That's the thing. Like, especially the idea that the BRICS are going to form a gold-backed currency. Now, that's like delusional thinking all on its own, because, the moment that you create a currency that is a good currency, especially one that is like gold, then people are going to hoard it. Like, you can't have a competitive currency that is a good currency come into a bad currency. It doesn't work like that. The moment that, because, what would you do if somebody offered you gold or a dollar? You would take gold. If somebody says, I will take gold or a dollar for payment, what would you offer? The dollar, right? You would hoard gold. Everybody would. And so it doesn't make any sense to where is documents? All right. Here we go. Where's that Richmond speech? Richmond Fed. Bang. Open up now. So right here in this Richmond Fed, it states this. This is talking about the average inflation. Oops. All right, it says here, notably in this update, the FOMC did not define the wisdom of time over which it would be looking back to assess the progress towards its goal. By looking back far enough, it is possible to identify starting dates where average inflation through the present day has come in exactly at targets. So this is important to understand, because people said that they don't have a metric or whatever, but they do. They kind of do. They know when they had 2% inflation. I mean, it wasn't current. It was a long time ago if you average the inflation in. But let me read that again so it's clear. The FOMC did not define the window of time over which it would be looking back to assess progress towards its goal. By looking back far enough, it is possible to identify a starting date where average inflation through the present day has come in exactly at target, that 2%. For example, that when considering inflation from October of 2008 through August of 2023, headline PCE inflation averaged about 2% per year on average, right on target. So there was a way that the Federal Reserve found their 2% average inflation rate over time. They know how far back it was, and they know that if they keep inflation extra elevated, they can bring that timeline closer to them. Do you see how this works? This is, again, this is coming out of the Richmond Fed October 17th, 2023 long run average inflation, macro minute, the Federal Reserve Bank of Richmond. Okay. So I don't have a link down in the description of this video for it, but maybe once it's uploaded, I'll go and do that for you guys. But if you wanted to go and check out that information for yourself, and it is the very last paragraph on that, it is a very, very short little economic letter. I mean, it's not but maybe 4 paragraphs long or something like that. All right. BRICS are currently running at 38%. All right. What respect to the dollar? If people say BRICS, I laugh. Russia and China tanking. India will play both sides. And Brazil's agriculture industries needs phosphate from Russia, which isn't there now. Yeah. And what was I reading? Something about like soybean production in Brazil is like got devastated from the El Nino or something like that. I don't know. I haven't read. Should change your name to Nut Now Chris. Oh, come on, man. Don't be making fun of people. All right. I doubt China will be looking at starvation anytime soon. You doubt China will be looking at starvation anytime soon. Wow. I wouldn't. Yeah, that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous to think because I think food production is going to get damaged very bad here in the future. I think it's going to get very hard to be manufacturing food. It's going to be very difficult to invest into food when food is going to give. Okay. Just like anything out there, the bullwhip effect will take place within the food industries in different fashions, right? And we've seen it very, very clearly within the chicken and pork industries just recently, where the COVID pandemic that created the shortages of chicken and pork, created the shortages of everything out there. The slaughterhouses got shut down, right? The processing facilities and stuff. This created a very big demand for chicken at the time because there was so little available out there and the prices went high. When the prices go high, investors see that high prices and say, I want to participate inside of this particular market to take advantage of those high prices, and a lot of investment pours in to the production of chicken and pork. Once the production of chicken and pork is ramped up and that volume of new product is now hitting the markets at the same time the demand falls because the shortages are now over, prices begin to fall too, and now the investment that has gone into it is no longer a viable investment. It's turned into a malinvestment. And what ends up happening is they have to now cut their losses and say, hey, we have to shut down operations and businesses and everything else. And now the real shortages kick in because there is no manufacturing taking place at the time. So this is part of the bullwhip effect. And now whether or not we experience it on a dramatic level or not, we have to see what comes from it. But it appears out there that there is definite issues happening with the world agricultural production, and I would not be holding my breath on the idea that there's always going to be food there. I would secure food in some way or another, whether it's like gardening to offset the cost or storage it up right now to try and again deal with the times that it may be more difficult to try and acquire food. Here in the United States, we're not going to recognize it as a food shortage, right? What it's going to end up being is the food's going to get very expensive. People complain about it all the time, even though we see the inflation scenario coming down, people are still talking about it being expensive at the grocery store because it's going to be expensive because the rest of the world is going to be suffering without it. The United States can afford to buy it. Unfortunately, it's going to be really expensive. So the rest of the world is starving. We're buying it for an expensive price. Right? We'll have it. It's just going to be really costly. Right? And that's going to be very damaging. People are going to be very upset by that, you know. And again, like if you're in a nation in which that you can't get new money in, how are you going to get food? You can't. Like you can't. And now you're really upset, you know. All right. China surpassed U.S. in GDP, BPP last year. Okay, sophisticated. Look at how badly they mismanaged their grain. China is probably a lot closer to starvation than you think. It's already happening away from cities. Real question, are you talking about during MA? Okay. I'm usually doing labor in those kinds of clothes, so they rip. She's ain't made like they used to, you know. What do you do with the Toyota? Why don't you use it anymore? Oh, I don't drive the Toyota as much anymore. And really, this is the reason why, is that if I lived in town, I would probably drive it. The highway that I have to drive down to go to work is probably one of the most dangerous highways in the country. Like, I don't know. I've known several people who have died just in the 15-minute drive from where I live to town. I don't know how many people have died on this highway. It is very twisty. It is, I mean, there's hills, there's blind corners. There are so many accidents that take place. People drive way, way too fast. They try to pass on this highway. It is very, very dangerous. And that little Toyota is not the safest little vehicle to be driving around in. So the Explorer is a much safer vehicle to be in. It's much, you know, it's taller. It's, you know, got more, you know, bulk to it than, say, you know, the Toyota does. So I just feel safer driving the Explorer than I do the Toyota. And that's the reason why I haven't been driving the Toyota. But if I was in town, I'd be driving the Toyota for sure, you know. But that's the only reason. And then it's wintertime too. So I might drive it during the summer if it's, you know, just for like, you know, weather purposes, you know, and stuff like that. Not that we have that bad of weather that you would need like four-wheel drive or something. But when it was icy and snow and stuff like that, I was glad to have it because it was, you know, it helped out quite a bit. But that's the reason why I don't drive the Toyota as much. All right. Where are we at here? All major international transactions are done in US dollar, and there is not enough liquidity and demand in other currencies. That's right. I covet trout. I covet bluegill. I covet perch. Salmon for me. There you go. USD is still king of how much longer? But for how much longer? I mean, that's just the thing. Where's a replacement? There isn't one. So it's just like until you actually have a replacement or a possible one. And I would honestly think it's probably going to end up being like stable coins or something like that, because you would need something that's going to be equivalent to the dollar. Like it's going to have to trade as if it's a dollar, like 1-to-1 with it, or have like a fixed, you know, trade to it. And then people get accustomed to that and then use it as if they were dollars, and then one day just take all the dollars away and have that new currency in place. It's how dollars took over gold, and it's how like stable coins can take over to the dollar. Excellent call out on the bullwhip effect on chicken and pork. The issue when the shutdowns happened really hit meat processors and exposed a monopoly of processing plants over farmers. Yeah. Yes, you are correct. Definitely all of us should be more mindful of food. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really, okay. Cantillon described wealth as three things: food, conveniences, and pleasures of life. That's it, right? Food, conveniences, pleasures of life. That is wealth. Now, most people don't really include wealth or food into their form of wealth, but yet it's one of the three that Cantillon described from 300 years ago. Now, conveniences, everybody seems to have this, right? You think about the phones and the Uber shares and, you know, door dashings and stuff like that, whatever, right? You have all these conveniences that are brought to you. And then pleasures of life. I mean, how many dopamine hits do you get a day from your phone? I mean, I know like I try to avoid YouTube shorts or TikTok videos or anything like that. Like I purposely stay away from those things and yet somehow find myself watching them occasionally. And I'm like, no, you made a conscious effort not to do this, but yet here you are doing it. How does this happen, right? It's because we're dopamine addicts, right? And so, and so when you think about the pleasures of life that are just so conveniently thrown right at you, you got food, conveniences, pleasures, all this stuff that is just handed to you, and yet we don't realize that these are the things that are typically considered wealth, right? And so now when you take away those things and you really think about what it is that you have out there, if you didn't have access to food, how wealthy would you be, or what would you need to get that? Right? Conveniences. I mean, how hard would it be to be without a car, right? Pleasures of life. Really? Your phone? You know, I like a nice view. Need a nice ribeye, decent view, some good music, right? Decent environment. That's pleasures of life. Food, conveniences, pleasures of life is wealth. Everything else doesn't matter, right? So food is wealth, and food is everything, right? And that's where, like, when we think about all the fancy cars and all the fancy clothes and toys and everything else out there, none of that stuff really matters any when it comes down to food. All right. People are getting pissed about food. Unemployment rates will skyrocket to 20%. In the next 10 years, UBI will be the real thing. I don't think so. I don't think unemployment's going to rise much at all, if anything. In fact, it's going to be so difficult for the Federal Reserve to try and create a situation in which that the money can be stimulating the economy that it's going to come into. I believe the UBI part of it. I just don't believe that the unemployment will rise. Like they're going to use like the idea that you won't be able to have a job and they'll have to give you UBI. I don't think it's going to work like that. I think the job that you have is not going to be enough to survive off of, and they'll have to give you UBI. They're literally going to have to force feed money into us. Right? That's what I think is going to happen. Is like regardless of a job or not, it ain't going to make any difference. You're going to need this money just to try and bring in all the massive stuff from around the world so that they can continue on issuing out the U.S. debt and have new money coming into the system. Here's another thing that I got to thinking about, like, because, they constantly, this is something that I thought was really, and this is me kind of just spinning off here, and I've been trying to understand what it is that this could look like. Ben Bernanke gave a speech about deflation back in 2002 and how to prevent deflation from ever occurring here in the United States. And now what was interesting about this speech is that he talked about the things that the Federal Reserve could be purchasing. Now we have to think this is prior to quantitative easing. I mean, this is like 6-7 years before quantitative easing ever happened. In that speech, in fact, I think I have it in here. In that speech, he talked about going into asset purchases and kind of talking about buying mortgages and talking about buying U.S. Treasuries. But then he said something that was really interesting and said that they may be limited on that stuff, but the idea of buying foreign debt gives them a much bigger scope of operation or pool of operation to buy into. So I think about that statement that keeps coming up about how the U.S. is on this unsustainable debt, and now the Fed is like, you can't continue to do this, but the Fed is going to need to continue into their operations, meaning that they need to find something out there to buy. And now I don't know where it is that they are going to find things to buy besides the U.S. Treasuries, mortgage-backed securities, and gold, because they're not really technically allowed to buy like corporate debt and stocks, even though like a lot of people will say that they do. Technically, they can't really do that and put it on their balance sheet as part of their assets as far as their assets and liabilities go. But apparently they can put foreign debt on there. Now, what would that U.S. Reserve note, Federal Reserve, like that would be a U.S. dollar, Federal Reserve note that has a foreign treasury of sorts backing it? That's kind of interesting to think. And then like how much can be printed then? And how much of the world trade can be done with a dollar that is backed by a currency or backed by a debt of a nation from a foreign, right? Like, you see where I'm kind of getting at here? Is just like, what happens when the Fed really needs to start printing up money because all this dollar denominated debt begins to start becoming due? What do they need to do? I mean, can they even print at a pace that is fast enough in order to cover all those debts? People don't think like that sometimes. They wonder, it's just like how it is that the United States government is going to continue on with their debt financing and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, how is it that the Federal Reserve is even going to be able to print at a pace that is fast enough to cover all the damn debts that have been issued in dollars? Do I not have it in here anymore? Maybe I lost it. Oh, well. I got another super chat. Let's go take a look at that. Oh, James, $5. Thank you very much for the super sticker. All right. To be honest, my mistrust of safety ratings is just based on sensitive and no evidence. Incentives and no evidence. I just don't. Oh, where are my glasses? I just don't see the incentives for very much trust in anything nowadays, now that I am Mr. Pessimistic. Oh, there's the boys. I don't know what they were doing over there at the neighbors. All right. GMA, when your parents gave you a birth certificate, they unknowingly sold you to the Federal Reserve as chattel. Yeah, that's kind of true. The birth certificate does kind of like sign you up for it. Okay, hey Simon, have you ever looked at world population chart and realized how many people there are? There were around 2 billion people 100 years ago and around 8 billion people. And now 8 billion. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, yeah, there's going to be more at some point too. I mean, I understand like overpopulations and stuff like that, and the damaging stuff that can come from it, but what are you going to do about it, right? And you consider like things change, like innovations change, way things are done, like necessity is the mother of invention. So as more people start to, live on this planet, we're going to have to figure out a way for more people to live on the planet, right? And in the current conditions we're in, yeah, I guess you could probably say that this is unsustainable and that there's not going to be like, we can't have all these people living here and there's going to be this mass die-off and all these other things. That's a fun prediction to try and make. I kind of take into consideration that we'll figure things out, right? And yeah, there probably will be situations in which it gets very painful and ugly because those things occur and there's no way to avoid them. And so it's going to be obvious that at some point in the future, you will experience something of that nature again. But I don't like to think about it, right? I want to think about how I'm going to prosper and succeed and do the best I can. And if those bad situations do occur, I would like to have thought that maybe I had some sort of insight that it was going to come and I protected myself in a way. I do that with, like, say, for example, silver, right? I hold on to a lot of silver. Well, not a lot, but I have some silver. I have cryptos. I have savings. I have all this other stuff that I try to have as far as insurance or to mitigate the pain of what I would feel from a downturn or a crisis situation. But I don't stress about any of this stuff. Like, I don't worry about it. Fear is the last place that you want to be because in fear, you can't make good decisions, right? You make good decisions when you're centered, when you are, thinking calmly and rationally. If you are in a position of fear or worry or stress or something like that, then all your energy is moved to your extremities. You're moved into this fight or flight mode, and you're not making good decisions. You're trying to be in a defensive decisions instead of a prosperous one. So, all right. The debt clock has 2 boxes marked debt per taxpayer and per citizen. That's all debt. Correct. Sinful and chatter is the, correct word. Anyways, all right. Inflation is the only answer to pay an insurmountable of U.S. debt. It's not honorable, but I think it's what they're going to do. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, how do you pay debt with another debt? You can't. You just create more debt by creating. You can't outrun the debt. Like, I mean, you can. You can outrun for me, for example, if we have massive inflation and all of a sudden everything starts to devalue, or however you want to look at it, the dollar devaluing, and then later on in the future, you can earn $100 an hour. Well, then I can pay my past debts off for a lot better with a devalued dollar in the future, since my debt is fixed at a certain rate, but the future of how much I can earn from a devaluing dollar, or how many dollars I get when they devalue, starts to make the debt purchases that I made in the past easier to pay off. Like, I totally get that part of it, but you have to you have to continually go deeper into debt if you have a system in which that is operating like that. Me personally, I don't have to go deeper into debt in order to pay off my past debts, right? I can go and earn money to do that. Now, if the United States is to do that, that's going to be a very difficult thing for them to try and do, to pay off those past debts without taking on new ones. Because ultimately, we don't produce anything that could pay off the past debts. So we would need to sell an item or something that's not U.S. treasuries, and we don't do that. So there's really no way to get out of it unless we start suffering with massive unemployment, very few purchases using, credits or debt, any kind of credit kind of thing going on. It's not really going to happen. Either it's forced or we have to choose to do it, and we won't choose to do it. So it'll be forced, and the forcing of it will be really ugly. Asia, developed countries are having problems with interest rates because the Fed don't know how long they can stand this. Because of the Fed, I don't know how long they can stand this high interest rate before everything burble busts. What exactly are stable coins? Oh, hey, Mom. That's Mom. Stable coins. Okay, so this is like a cryptocurrency out there that basically is backed by the dollar. So if you can imagine okay, let's just make it really simple. A guy develops a cryptocurrency, right? And he says, for every cryptocurrency that I create, there's going to be $1 sitting in a bank account that represents that piece of cryptocurrency that is out there. So for every one of these, there's $1 sitting in a bank somewhere. And now the stable coin can get used just the same as a dollar does, because ultimately you could trade it in for that dollar that's sitting in that bank account. And now the stable coin gives you the ability to do transactions like a Bitcoin would do, and you can interact with anybody all over the world or whatever, and trading these stable coins around. So the idea of a stable coin is just basically like a digital dollar. It's just a dollar that's, or a cryptocurrency that's backed by a dollar. The funny thing about that is that if it is trading 1-to-1, right? So you have a stable coin that somebody had developed, right? Has cash sitting in a bank account somewhere that represents the coins that are out there in circulation. Any monetary policy that is conducted from the Federal Reserve will transfer into that stable coin, right? So now the stable coin has the monetary policy strategies of the Federal Reserve operating within it, because it is trading 1-to-1 with the dollar. So now, as people start to use these stable coins, if they choose to, right, and they start using these stable coins, the cash can basically be pulled out of the system as more and more people are buying into the stable coins, finding it more convenient to use it. At some point, it doesn't necessarily go down this way, but then what needs to back the stable coin doesn't necessarily have to be the dollar. They could just start switching it out for something else, saying, hey, we got other currencies that are now in with this stable coin. Stable coin is now a world currency of some sorts, being backed by a basket of currencies around the world in that sense. Now, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just hypothetically speaking on a sense there. That's historically correct, Dave. Hi, Mom. Right on, all-nighter. It's because of the high risk, not because of the Fed. All-nighter, there's a t-shirt YouTube video by Nick the Plus called Why Was Birth Certificate Created? I can help stable coins. Oh, there you go. Stable coins are a crypto coin that tries to base its value off an intrinsic value, maintain value. Example, a crypto coin that manages itself to be one-to-one with the US. All right. Gives insight to Woodrow Wilson's memories. Fear is the mind killer. It really is. I mean, and that's, and it's probably, like I've mentioned it before. Like I try to deal with the fact that I have a big ego, right? And it's not easy just to admit it, right? But you got to admit it at some time. It was just like, okay, so what is this that's going on that I have to like, things have to be this particular way. Like if it doesn't go down this way, I start getting very irritated and upset with people or whatever, and I had to start letting that stuff go. And I was wondering why it is that I even had this big ego to begin with. Like, why did I like, believe that everything had to be like, according to what like I thought it should be. And instead of just letting go and just, just letting outcomes be outcomes, or and just however it does, and whatever let the chips fall where they fall, right? And I realized it was probably fear-based. Like I was scared of outcomes. Like I was scared of what it would, what the future was going to hold. And because of that, I, was so like, forcing like the things to be in line so that I could be very sure of what was going to take place. And letting go of that is better. It's like, it starts letting more stuff in, and you don't have to, being in fear is it's dangerous. Being fearful is dangerous. That's one of the things like I also get kind of a little bit upset about when I think about like when I think about what it is that I need to do in order to, generate more revenue here on the YouTube channel. And I don't want to fall into fear. I don't want to be like one of those fear mongering, fear porn kind of people. Like, I mean, even some of the content that I'm putting out now is somewhat fearful in a lot of ways, but it's not so much like, to me, it's not fearful in a way that they're coming to like, destroy you right now. It's fearful in a way that it's going to be like, damn, this is going to be difficult times. That's like that the kind of fear. And I'm not scared of difficult. I'm not scared of difficult times. I'm not, like I'm willing to work hard and do all that other stuff. So like to me, that's not scary. To me, like that's just the way it is. And so I don't look at it as a fearful thing going into the future. I look at it as it's just like, as actually I look to the future as being bright, as being awesome, as like, having a great future coming to me, and I don't want to spread it out there on YouTube as being some fearful experience coming to you so that I can earn some money from that. I'd rather give you the information so that you can walk through with confidence, and be able to find that's where my niche is at. I know that everybody kind of sees things differently, and everybody's going to have their own opinions on what it is that's taking place out there. I find that the information that I am presenting, and I know like everybody would say this, like, I mean, I know everybody would say this thing, but I really think that my information, the stuff that I am digging into, is more helpful for the average person than anybody else's stuff out there. This is like, this is the way that you can internalize it for yourself so that you can continue on with operating in your normal life the way you normally did without changing anything that you're doing. But then you can operate with confidence, and therefore with that confidence you will have a better outcome. All right, it's all about the meaning you give everything. All right, thanks, Sinful. I wrote that down and we'll check it out. What do you think of while life insurance to be your own bank? I don't know. I mean, I've heard people talk about strategies like that before, but I don't know. I guess I haven't really thought about it much. The fourth churning 2020 to 2030. Not long enough, though. More fake money. Fake money backed by faker money. It's a Ponzi scheme. Ponzi schemes. Ponzi schemes of Ponzi schemes. Yeah. Who's the somebody? Seems that somebody is the king if he created it. The item we sell is war. Isn't it illegal to print money since the wildcat banking ended? What does that mean for stablecoin issuers? Are there legal ramifications technically? Well, I think that's probably one of the bigger questions that the Federal Reserve is having right now because they have mentioned stablecoins so many times and getting regulations behind it. So I don't know, like the legalities behind it all, like the regulations within the banking part of things, like a lot of a lot of times, like, and this was something that was kind of in the early days of trying to understand the economy. I didn't quite understand that there's like two ways of banking, right? There's the Federal Reserve banking system, right, which is kind of the one that we look at through politics, regulations, um, all the stuff that I think like can be controlled through, say, maybe like the idea that you could vote for somebody that can control this part of the financing system, the banking system. And then you have private banking, right? And these aren't exactly the same things. Now, there is some rules and regulations within the private banking, but there's not exactly like a clarity of what takes place within the shadow banking. And now shadow banking isn't necessarily like I guess like when I first heard shadow banking, I thought like shady banking. That's not what it is. Shadow banking is just the banking that operates outside of the Federal Reserve's banking system, right? So when you have private lending taking place, that's shadow banking, right? And a lot of times, like mortgages are generated within the shadow banking system, right? So you got private mortgage lenders who then sell that mortgage off into like the government agencies or whatever, and it ends up as a mortgage-backed security sitting on the Fed's balance sheet. But originally, that mortgage might have started off in the private lending area. So it might have started off in the shadow banking system and then eventually moved into the traditional banking system or like the Federal Reserve's banking system. Forgot where I was going with that. What was the question? Oh, and so, yeah, I guess that's what it comes down to, regulations. And that's where, like, a lot of times you will find where, like, certain things had been created. Like, okay, so all the subprime mortgages got created in the shadow banking system, and the Fed had to deal with that, right? So now they got like these rules and regulations on how the mortgage-backed securities can be built, so they don't end up with a bunch of toxic mortgage-backed securities out there. So when the mortgage lenders are out there, the private mortgage lenders, they're just not out there just willy-nilly handing loans to people so that they can build these mortgage-backed securities. It doesn't go down like that anymore, right? There's very hardcore stringent rules on what it is that they can have for a lend or for a borrower out there who's going to be able to be put into these mortgages or these mortgage-backed securities that would have been purchased by the Fed. Did I say all that right? Yeah. Does all that make sense? I don't know. So there's got to be like, they got to understand that like, I guess the idea is that the shadow system has to rise in order for them to go, oh crap, there's something there. How do we regulate this? Like, you can't regulate something that doesn't exist yet. Like, we're going to create regulations that for something that doesn't exist. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right? It has to exist first in order for them to be able to regulate it. And when you move up in a social hierarchy, serotonin is released in your brain, telling you that you're doing good and increased your chances of survival. That's part of where ego comes from. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Serotonin is an addictive chemical that clouds judgment. Fear of losing dominance also is a factor. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I never really thought about it like that, but that makes sense. Hello from Sweden. Thanks for what you do, Simon. What do you think about shelter inflation lags? Does Powell really have any control over rates? Well, I mean, again, like the FOMC is the voting. Powell doesn't really make any decisions, but we can just kind of pretend that Powell is you know, is the person in decision making for the FOMC. Does he have? Yeah, they have control over interest rates, but you can see they only have a limited control over what it is that the free market is going to eventually come in and step up and start doing. Like, a lot of people don't realize that there are free market forces, there are economic forces that are always going to be at play regardless if you can see them or not. Like, just because the plane has gas, has fuel, and is flying doesn't mean that gravity doesn't exist, right? As soon as the fuel is run out, the gravity kicks in and then it's over, right? So there are economic forces that are always at play out there. Now, when we think about when the Federal Reserve went to raise interest rates, like they raised interest rates aggressively, like faster and quicker than any time in history, just about. And the moment that they started to do this, the mortgage rate shot up almost immediately to like 7-8%. Like, they shot way up right away and plateaued, and they stayed there, right? So as the Federal Reserve kept raising rates, the mortgage rates really weren't keeping in lockstep. Like, they found their spot, and that's where they stayed. So does the Federal Reserve control the mortgage rates? They do have the ability to dump mortgage-backed securities because they have a bunch of those sitting on their balance sheet. So they could flood the market with they could flood They could flood the market with those mortgage-backed securities, and if they did that, then the price of the mortgage-backed security would fall and the yields would rise, and the mortgages that people would be taking out would be at a higher interest rate. So they do have that kind of control over things, but when they want to go raise the interest rates and start unwinding the balance sheet, that pissed the mortgage market off. Boom, they shot up to 7%, 8%, and then plateaued off. And that's where they've been. Like, yeah, they fluctuate a little bit, but that's ultimately what happened. So as the Federal Reserve kept doing their thing with their Fed funds rate, the mortgage rate was just like, yeah, I don't care. This is where we're at. Right? So, I mean, how much control did they have over it then? Probably if they had unwound the balance sheet a little bit more, then they could have created higher interest rates in the mortgage market. All right? But, I mean, as far as I can tell, the messing with interest rates had pretty much an initial shot to the mortgage market, and then it really didn't affect it after that. Not as much anyway. Now the perception of it does. You notice, like, soon as like the Fed came out with, we're done raising rates and we're cutting them right away, and everybody believed it, and they thought that the whole scheme was over and that interest rate cuts were going to be coming. The mortgage market started to react to that information, and the interest rates started to come down on a lot of these mortgages. I mean, it was obvious that that credible threat out there gave a little boost to the mortgage market, and they can do it again with just that simple idea of just putting out the statement or the credible threat or the idea that the interest rates are going to come down. The exact same thing can happen again, and the better that credible threat is, the more likely that it's going to happen, the more reasonable of a permanent actual difference to the mortgage market would actually take in place, even before they do anything. Right? Even before they do a single thing. So, yeah, like, do they have control? Yeah, kind of, somewhat, All right. Fun fact, if you have a safety deposit box in a bank, there is a bank run, they own it, and you won't get it back. Thank you for all your fantastic teachings and infos. For years, you are inspirational and definitely the reason we saved thousands to take in your thoughts and run with them. Yeah, well, thank you very much. I mean, it is. You can go and take classes to learn economics, but I don't think you're going to learn it like this. In fact, I'm pretty sure you won't, because nobody else talks like this. So I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who's going to show you how the economy is operating in this sort of fashion. There's a lot of crossover. You can find other people who might talk similar to the things that I talk about. You might even find somebody who talks really close, but I doubt you're going to find anybody who's talking exactly the way I do and covering some of the things that I do in the way that I do. Especially just like the whole point of this video that I started was just a simple fact that people believe that Jerome Powell actually expected that the supply chains was going to bring inflation down. That right there is a lie. He didn't actually believe that. And the only way that I know that he didn't actually believe that is because I was calling that out as a bullshit statement 2.5 years ago. And if I could do that 2.5 years ago, then I'm sure somebody at the Federal Reserve would probably have had some sort of similar opinion that I had about the supply chain not being able to bring inflation back down because it's not going to be repaired. repaired if you have a consumer that is damaged. It just makes so much sense to me that there was no way that I could see it any other way. And then that was the outcome, right? That's what ended up happening. I mean, Jerome admitted that. He tried to say that he didn't know that was going to be the case and that they made a mistake and they waited too long and all this other stuff. No. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Straight up. That's a lie. It's a lie for everybody to be subject to their propaganda. It is, it was just like, it was so obvious to me. I was lit up this morning when I saw it. And I mean, it was just like, and I don't mean to, like put any negative thought on my buddy, but it's just like, am I the only one? I feel like I feel like the entire world is delusional, or it must be me, right? I mean, that's it. And I don't know how it could possibly be me when it's just so clearly stated within their own documents. Like, we got stable coins or digital tokens designed to stay steady in value by being tied to stable assets like dollars and gold, making them, there we go, potentially bridge between traditional financing and the crypto world. My son woke up and started playing cash flow board game by himself. My daughter loves it too. There's hope for the future. All right. Wow. Isn't that cool? See, this is what's cool. Like, my mom asked the question about stable coins, and you see all the comments that are coming in. This is perfect. Like Will here, final comment: stable coins are awesome in theory, practically, unless the central bank manages the stable coins, the chances of a stable coin actually being stable is unlikely. We should never forget that the system is designed to make the rich richer. Well, let's think about that for just a second. Is it really to make the rich richer when you have an opportunity to become rich yourself within the system? I mean, sure. I mean, I want to be rich someday, so I don't want a system in which that doesn't allow me to become rich. And if the rich get richer because of that system, then that's cool with it. I'm cool with it. Right? Because I want to become rich myself, and I don't want to be limited in that ability. And if I ever got there one day, I don't want to be punished for doing it. Right? Yeah, I mean, so it's just like, to me, the rich getting richer, that's the system I want to be in. I don't want to be in a system where the rich can't get richer, because then that means that I can't get rich to begin with. Or if I did, I would be punished for doing it. I don't want to live that way. I want to live in a system in which that I'm being rewarded for being rich. I mean, why is that like... is that a hard thing to conceptualize? It's just like, work really hard, become rich, get punished. Yeah, let's do that. It doesn't make any sense to me, I mean, why? Like, doesn't, like, I can understand that if I had no opportunity to ever become rich, or I didn't think that I was going to someday, then yeah, maybe I can understand, let's punish the rich, right? But that's not the way I feel. I feel like one day I want to have a lot of money, a lot of opportunities, a lot of assets and businesses, or something going on in my life that is going to mean that I would be technically rich. And if I had that going on, I don't want to be punished for that. All right. Hey, right on, man. You guys are loading me up on the super chats. Really appreciate that, guys. I love the support, man, because it feels good to have it. All right. Oh, right on. We also got a new member to the channel. Thank you for joining. All right. Hey, Lumberjack Landlord, truly one of my favorite YouTubers. If you want to really understand what markets are doing, you can't do better than UE. Well, thank you, Lumberjack Landlord. Matthew, that's so awesome. I'm looking forward to meeting you here next week, man. Actually meeting you in person. All right. Thank you so much for that $20, man. Yeah, and thank you for joining the channel there, SFM. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I mean, these live streams that we do on the members only, they're second to none. I mean, I do a lot of, like I said, they're kind of boring in a way. Like, I don't mean to, like, talk down about, like, the one thing that I actually have to sell, but but we get deep into these topics. I mean, like the path forward for capital reform, the speech that we had covered from Michelle Bowman the other night. I mean, I have to thank the guys. I mean, it was a very dull reading, getting through that speech. But there was probably 20, I don't know, 20 or 30 of us who sat through the entire thing and then had a discussion about it. So now when it comes to the Basel capital reforms and how the United States is going to react to it, we have a much better understanding of what it is that the Federal Reserve is thinking and how it is that they are not necessarily like on board with the just broad change to how it is that the capital is going to be at these banks, especially when it comes to some of the smaller, community banks who can't handle some of these capital requirements that they are suggesting that they have, and that they would have to be tailoring in order for the reform to be more consistent with what it is that the United States needs for its needs, and then also being able to operate within the international concepts of banking with other nations and stuff like that. If that wasn't confusing enough, try reading the speech for yourself and not having a discussion about it. Then it's really confusing, right? But that's what we do. That's what this is what we do on the channel, on the members only, is we break down this hardcore economic theories and understanding so that we can get a better understanding of what it is that we need to do. And it's funny because like people even told me now they watch like the news and they say, dude, I think of you every time I see somebody mention this or that or whatever. And it's just like, yes, that's it. That's the internalization that I'm talking about, is to finally get it in there so that you can recognize the credible threats, you recognize the bullwhip effect, you recognize, Cantillon effect, you recognize the Gresham's law and Triffin's dilemma and all the other stuff that's going along with it. And that's how we do it. All right. Let me see. Where was Lumberjacks? There it is. Okay. Discovering everything you thought you, but are finding out you didn't. Take a seat. Buckle up. Yeah. This Thanks, Matt. Yeah, super hider, always happy to participate. Yeah, this is something that I found is it's so difficult when all of a sudden you start realizing that everything is like counterintuitive to what you thought, because it's like we were raised in a way that we just kind of almost had this assumptions about stuff, um, we just operated in this almost blind state. And then once you start figuring things out, it doesn't seem right because you have always had this belief you just kind of assumed or whatever. And you start learning it for real, and you start realizing what's going on, and it's just like, man, this is so backwards. This is so counter to everything that I had ever been taught or believed or even hear on a regular basis out there from everybody. And once you start accepting it, you're like, okay, so it is going to be the completely different from what I thought, right? And you open up your mind to that, like you let go of everything that you had ever thought was or should be or gonna be or whatever. And you just kind of let all that go, and you just say, okay, what is it? What is that's happening here? I just want to know not necessarily what the truth is. It doesn't that part can be twisted and turned around too. It's more just understanding what is it? What is it that's taking place? And so when you think about it more of like an economic force, when you think about it more like gravity, like a natural force that you just can't like change. Like, I mean, if you drop something, it's going to happen no matter what. Like that gravity is always going to be there. Now, I can hold it up. I can use my energy to keep this thing right here. And for a very long time, I can make it not occur, the gravity, right? Just by simply holding it here. But it doesn't make it go away. The gravity is still there, right? It still exists. And just like economic forces out there, they exist just like gravity. It's a naturally occurring thing. So now when you recognize it as a naturally occurring thing, you don't blame politicians. Right? You don't blame them for it because it's not their fault. If you gave them blame, then you would have to give them credit. And here's the problem with giving them blame. and having to give them credit is that if you do give them credit, then you can actually vote for somebody who can fix the system. The problem is you can't fix it. And so anybody out there who's talking about, oh, I know how to deal with this problem, you're lying, right? Because you can't fix the problem. You can only operate within it, right? There is no fixing it. It's on a one, it's just a direction in which it goes. Now, you can change things for generations, like, and make it seem that way. Like, the whole idea of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, we might find where, who knows, a decade goes by in which that it actually shows some sort of significance and that people are like, look, you're wrong, dude. It's totally happening. Yeah. Let's give it over the course of like an entire lifetime. Let's give it a lifetime and see how that goes, and find out whether or not manufacturing actually does come back to the United States, or if it just happened to be a little blip on the radar in which that, has slowed things down for a while, but the eventual demise comes to the United States due to the fact that they cannot manufacture in competition against the rest of the world. Right? I mean, it just can't happen. I mean, I don't care how many sanctions and subsidies and tariffs and all this other stuff that you do out there, the economic forces that are at play will always be there, right? And you have to recognize them, because just because you're flying in a plane doesn't mean that the gravity isn't still gonna, still gonna occur when the fuel runs out, All right. You keep on saying I about 150 times, and it's called the big I. All right. The elite owns the rock we live on, we rent it. There are no solutions, only alternatives. Bank has never had their hooks in it. My father built it with his own bare hands. Not all debt is equal. And okay, thanks. I was wondering more about the shelter rent inflation lag. It's still 6-7% with these mortgages and treasury rates, and not absolutely crushing demand. Yeah, I mean, well, I couldn't tell you like the outcome of having high interest rates and stuff like that. I mean, like, a lot of people will say this is going to cause this and that and all the other things. Like, I kind of look at it more on the bigger scale of like, why is this occurring in the fashion that it is? And you're going to find as time goes on, like, again, like, you might find, like, we might come into a situation here over the next, couple of years or whatever, in which rents come down. People are really excited about being able to get into, an apartment for a cheaper price or something like that. You may find situations in which that occurs for a short period of time, but the overall time, like, over the course of generations and the longer term, it's going to be continually to get more difficult and harder for people because of the separation between the rich and the poor, and due to the new money that is coming in. And there's no better way of recognizing the abundance of money that is coming into the system other than the cost it is to buy a house or rent a house or to have a dwelling to live in. Those are going to be the most expensive things, because ultimately only the rich get to live in homes, right? And I mean, it's not like I'm not trying to, like, put anybody down or try to like level somebody else up because they have a house or don't have a house, right? But ultimately that's what it comes down to, is that even going back through history, if you are sitting in a situation in which that you have the capabilities of being in a home or renting a home or having it, generally you're probably going to be doing much better than somebody who can't do that. And that possibilities, those two differences are widening. Right? So it's going to be very difficult if you're down here to try and jump into where it is that you need to be in order to acquire those houses and apartments and stuff like that. The guy who's just like graduated high school, driving delivering pizzas and stuff like that, is going to have a very difficult time. Right? He's going to have to not only deliver pizzas, but then do DoorDash and then do, something else on selling online. And he's going to have all these different forms of revenue coming in just to get an apartment. Right? This is going to go worse. Like this problem. Like, I don't see any way that there's going to be an alleviation of that. It's only going to get harder. you know. Rents will never come down. Lumberjack says, largely you are correct. Yeah. That's not true. We all had a difficult time. Yeah, okay. So like that's the thing that people said, no, back in my day we had a difficult time too. No. Okay? Yeah, you did. No, you didn't. We have a hell of a lot more conveniences now. I mean, I could flip open a phone and boop, 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 have anything I want, right? I mean, that's pretty convenient. And no, you didn't have that back in your day. So yeah, it was hard in that fashion. However, back in the day, like even I can say this, back when I graduated high school, my wife and I, she was my girlfriend at the time, but my wife and I, we had part-time jobs. She worked at a pizza parlor. I worked at the lumber yard with our part-time jobs being seniors in high school. I had a car. I paid insurance. I saved enough money to rent an apartment so that the day I graduated high school, I moved in with her, right? Like this all occurred with part-time jobs when I was a kid. I very seriously doubt that could take place here today. Not in my area. Like you might find someplace in the nation that could be possible, but it's not happening where I'm at. And so things have definitely changed in the sense that there is a separation between the rich and the poor when it comes to the working class and what it is that they can do and what it was that they could do back in the day, right? Because back in the day, I was making less than $5 an hour. All right. She was making about the same. We were making minimum wage, part-time, renting an apartment, paying insurance on a car. Right? When we went full-time, we were both like, wow, this is great. And then we found out how hard it really was because now all of a sudden, you know, we got more bills to pay, right? Because we got food and other things and we're on our own and paying electricity and all this other stuff. And it was hard, right? It was so hard to make, but we did it, right? And I just can't see anybody doing that today. You know? Not in our area. Minimum wage should be the value of silver. I don't think there should be a minimum wage. I think minimum wage should be abolished. All right. The last 50 years have been the easiest time in history. Well, I guess it depends on what it is that you're saying is easiest time. Like, I mean, is it easiest time for living? Yeah, I kind of agree. You know, like convenience-wise, yeah, it's definitely been one of the easiest times in history. But as far as like, you know, the ability to achieve the level of success that a lot of these other, you know, people have done in the past, although I think is very well prevalent there, like is there, you know, the possibilities of it. I think the conditioning in which the people, they just don't have that drive to do it. Like, you know, like maybe back in the day or something. And I think that's probably due to the fact that things are so easy. You're so transparent, respect. Yeah, thanks, man. Well, that's the only thing I got, right? I can't fake it with you guys because the moment that I do, you would recognize it and it would be over for me, right? So I can't fake this. I can't like, you know, pretend to be something or try to do videos that I trying to get your attention or get your approval or something like that. I can't do that way. You guys would eat it up. You guys would just, you know, eat me up and throw me out. So this is the only thing I got, is to come out here and be as authentic as I can, give you my true beliefs and feelings and understandings of how it is and the way that I understand it. And I stick to it too. Like I don't, like if I was trying to do things in a way that was seeking your approval or trying to just get the audience approval in some way, I would be all over the place with my beliefs. I would be like believing this one day and that the next day or whatever. And I mean, I stay like, that's how come I'm able to pull a video from 2.5 years ago and say, no, this is crap. Like, you know, this is, you know, I said it 2.5 years ago, it wasn't going to work. I'm saying it today that that's the case, you know, and I don't change from that. And I believe that that's probably going to be the case for the rest of my life when it comes to this channel, because I just don't know how to do it any other way. So even if I wanted to fake it, I don't think I can. Like the moment that I come out and try and do like some crazy fear porn mongering video or something like that, you guys are gonna be like, what in the world is this? I mean, you guys already call me out when I do stuff like that. There shouldn't be no minimum wage. Yeah, I agree. Why is it there is a max? Why isn't there a maximum wage? Why isn't there? Because, all right, what's the maximum wage? What should it be? Like, what is it that you think that it is that it should be me limited on how much that I could possibly make for my life and what I could do with that money once I have earned it? Like, who are you to tell me how much that should be? I'm just curious. Like, I mean, I'm not like trying to be like, a dick or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, if I earned what, $100 million a year, would that just blow your mind? I mean, would that be like too much money to have? Would that be like something that I should be taxed 75% on so that I only have $25 million in a year because, having $2 million a month is enough for anybody? I mean, is that kind of like the idea behind it? Because I tell you what, if I can earn more than $25 million a month, or a year, but I had the capabilities of earning $100 million a year, but I wasn't allowed to do it, then I would earn $25 million a year, call it quits, tell everybody that had worked for me, see ya, right? Because I can't earn any more than this because I'm going to get taxed, so I'm limited to 25 million. Sorry, I'm not operating any more businesses. I'm not doing any more transactions. I'm not going to do anything with you guys until the end of the year, and then I can earn another $25 million again. So all the efforts, all the time, all the things that I could do with all the capabilities of earning $100 million and all the business that I could do out there in the economy with people's jobs and careers and all the other stuff that comes with it would all be limited because I can't earn more than $25 million. I mean, I could, but I'd be taxed on it. So what would be the point? Working for nothing? Why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. So what limit do you want to put on it that I can no longer achieve any more money from? You see what I'm getting at? Like, I don't want to be punished for being rich, right? I'm not rich. I'm not even close to it, but someday I'd like to be, and I don't want to be punished for doing that because, like, that's what I'm trying to achieve, right? Maximum wage is absurd. It's based on value you bring. That's it. Sorry, voice to text on picked up your word easiest. If minimum wage was abolished, we would see an even wider gap between the rich and the poor. I don't think so, Jeremy. I really don't. See, here's the problem right now that I see happening with a lot of people out there is that, I've seen this before. Why doesn't that dude sitting over there on that park bench go get a job? You know why? It's because that dude can't earn enough to provide to his boss. Like, he is not smart enough, have the value or capabilities of providing enough service to his boss or anybody out there to achieve minimum wage. Like, he might be able to do half that. Like, he might be able to have enough skills and brains in his head from all the crap that he has done to his life that he might have the capabilities of earning half of a minimum wage. But because he's so stupid, right, he is not allowed to work in this country because he can't earn enough to provide his boss with enough service that he can pay him a minimum wage because the minimum wage is too high. But if there was no minimum wage, that guy sitting over that park bench could earn whatever he wanted for the skills that he had. And that is the American way. Right? But no, not here in America, not with the minimum wage. Because if you're too stupid in America, you don't get to work here. You get to be, on the streets doing nothing. That's what that means. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I don't know why they would do that to us. Right? Like, there's some people out there who are just not smart enough to earn minimum wage, and they're too stupid to work in America now because of the minimum wage. It's insulting. And people might say what I said was insulting. And I mean, I find that completely ridiculous and backwards, I think you're misunderstanding. I mean, lag. Oh, geez, we're back to this. Okay. I think misunderstanding lag as when the inflation was in 2022 Shelter inflation is still 6 or 7%. How could that play out in the coming 6 to 12 months? I mean, if you're thinking like, the inflation's still going up, like I can't tell you what's going to happen with mortgages or rents or anything else going into the future. Like, I mean, we could have a great giant crash of this whole thing, and like all the projections of what we have anticipated right now can just be wiped off. I I mean, as far as like the future coming for, like, I mean, if you want to know like what I believe is going to happen with inflation in the dwellings and like the housing and stuff like that, it's going to become more difficult. Like, and as far as the lag or what's going to impact in time and stuff like that, I don't know. Like, I mean, is it going to come over the next 6 months that we're going to experience the bottoming, or that would be the time? I like timing stuff like that. I really don't know. And I don't try to time it as much as I used to. Like, I think some things I try to time like based off of what other people have said, like the whole liquidity crisis and the bond buyback program that's coming from the Treasury. Like, they said that was going to happen some point in the middle of the year, right? So it seems kind of like things are lining up for that. That's a prediction that I've been saying quite a bit, but that's not really my prediction. That's really what the Treasury said, like that they were going to do. So it's not even really a prediction. It's just kind of like, that's what they said. Um, but I don't know. Lumberjack Landlord probably has a better opinion on that. All right. Minimum wage being removed allows for the employer and the employee to have a blind bid. I actually tune in when I see your vids because of zero clickbait, and you drop a few gems every vid. Well, thank you so much. And that's the thing. Like, I don't want to be like, I have to clickbait the titles. I have to, or else they just don't get any recognition. In fact, I had a very descriptive title on a video last week, and I changed the title and put like, I don't know. I think I just added some like words like crisis or something into it just so that it would be triggering. And sure enough, like right away, it started getting more views. And I'm thinking, man, like the content of the video was exactly the same. There is no difference within it. So it's not the content, it's the damn title. It's the title, it's the thumbnail, it's the description, it's all these things that literally will make the difference on whether or not the video is a profitable one or one that gets hardly any views, right? The content can stay the same. And that's what's sad about it, right? Those people who find value in the content can care less what the title says, care less about the, whatever. They just want the content, they want the information for it. So I work hard to bring that information, but if I don't like clickbait the titles, then the information doesn't really get out there, and it's like, I mean, I think it's worthy for those who find it. I mean, I'm glad they do, but I would really like to see more people see this type of content and to get that information out there so that the Fed can't hide from it anymore. I mean, I think that's ultimately what it is here, is that they are continuing on with the propaganda, especially with the lie that Powell told during that 60 Minutes interview, saying that he was hoping that there was going to be a return of the supply side with, which was completely delusional thinking. Wow, look at all these comments. Alrighty, guys. It is getting, how long are we in this? 2.5 hours already. My gosh. All right. Thanks, Simon, for answering. Hope nothing but good health for you and your family. Oh yeah, you bet, man. Thank you for being here. Thank all of you. I mean, 236 people with 335 likes. I love it. I love seeing 100 more likes than I have people watching right now. That is so awesome. But I understand that, it's a Saturday morning and people probably don't have like, all day to sit here and watch the Uneducated Economist go off. Titles should be kind of slang as well. Apparently, the algo doesn't like AI titles. Yeah, and it's just, it's sad because it's the algorithm that's doing it to me. Like there was a time when I had 50,000 subscribers and I would get 20,000 views on a video. Now I have 130,000 subscribers and I get 5,000 views on a video. So out of like 130,000 people who are subscribed to the channel, the algorithm is really spreading it around enough for less than 5% of the people to get to view it. It's just like, to me, it's just it I'm sure it's something that I've done, right? I'm sure it's me, but still, like, whatever it is, I don't feel like I've changed a whole lot over the years of what it is that I'm doing here. I kind of do the content the same way. Pretty much been the same the entire time, and wouldn't understand why it would all of a sudden just, like, change like this last year, because that's basically when it happened, was about a year ago. And it was like practically overnight. It started off with a huge purge on the subscribers. Like, it was like over the course of like a few days, like something like 500 subscribers fell off the channel. Now, I know that YouTube does this occasionally. They will purge out dead accounts and, kind of do stuff like that. And it's somewhat annoying in a way, but it's also kind of beneficial. Like, it's just like, you'd really want like active accounts on your channel anyway. You don't want a bunch of like, worthless accounts, the dead accounts on your channel. And so I understand that part of things, but it seemed like once that started to take place, it never quite returned. It was just like, all of a sudden, it was like I would put out the videos, and it seemed like they would get spread around, and like 10,000 views would hit the video, or hit the video within a few hours or something like that. Now I'm like, geez, does it even get to 1,000 views in the first hour? So again, it's like, how do you fix that? Like, do I change the way that I do things so that I can accommodate the algorithm, or, to spread it out there more? Am I really just going for money? If you go for money, you're probably going to fail at it. You just have to let that kind of naturally occur by bringing value and effort and stuff like that to things. So, this is where I'm at. I don't really want to change anything that I'm doing. Like, I love the channel. I love the way I do it. I just want to continue on the way I'm doing things, and I'm going to try and do that. Like, either it comes back or it doesn't, but I don't want to change. Like, I don't want to have to adapt to their wants and stuff in order to, make money at it or something like that. I like the way I did this. I think it was very successful in the way that it worked out. I think it's more relatable too, and so it's just the way it's going to be. Thank you, Matthew, man. You keep hitting me up with that, man. You're awesome. Here we go. Something about apartments. I like it. All right. New basic apartments don't get built. That's what that's what will keep rents high. Supply versus demand. There is an endless demand for affordable rent units, and all that gets built in new units that need to be luxury based on builders' cost. New basic apartments don't get built. Yeah, and I don't know if you caught the live stream I did the other day, Matthew, but there's a 62 unit apartment complex that was supposed to be like right on the river, fairly nice. I don't think maybe it was designated for low income or affordable income or something like that, but being right on the river the way they are, I would imagine that they're probably going to be in high demand. Anyway, they're stagnant. Like, they got the framing, got some windows in there, but there's hardly any siding, and it's like building is already starting to deteriorate. There hasn't been work done to it for months and months now. And so I can imagine like what kind of condition many projects like that are across the nation, right? I mean, this is an apartment that should have been completed by now, I would assume. People should be renting those places, and now who knows when it's going to happen. It's still far off there, so that's more rentals that are not coming onto the market yet, All right. It's not you, as COVID has people who are adjacent to financial YouTubers have seen their views drop, died. Oh yeah, that's probably makes a lot of sense too, because people like, that's when it really channel took off, is when everybody was locked down. So they're sitting at home trying to figure things out, and therefore you're getting a lot of views in that fashion. That kind of, I didn't, I had thought about that in the past and just kind of like forgot, but you're right. That's probably the case, because you're right. I mean, I've heard other YouTubers saying that as well. So is really like, not only do you support the Uneducated Economist, but you get a ton of value out of it too, because of the discussions that we have on some of these deeper topics. I mean, you think that's the things I talk about are deep, you should see some of those live streams we do. They choose who they promote and will get the ad money. Yeah, and I agree with that, and that's another thing. Like, when we're going into a slowdown, corporations are not advertising as much, or there's less ad revenue out there to spread around. And so YouTube algorithm really only wants to put the ads on the best videos that are out there so that the advertisers are basically made happy. So if there's less ad revenue going around and you have the top ad or the top videos that are being played, they're going to get the ads, right? They're going to get the algorithm to spread those ads around. Dinky little channel like the Uneducated Economist gets to fall short a little bit. I never thought of a specific mortgage yield curve. Thanks for that mention. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Workforce housing is the newest trend. In my area, that's 2,100 for 2 bedroom. That's absurd. Oh my gosh. $2,100 to rent a place? Egads. And I thought my mortgage payment was high. I mean, it's higher than that, but dang. All right, let's partner up and get that property, Matt and Simon. Winners unite. Yeah, I think it did get sold to some investors. Like, I thought the project was going to fire back up at one point, like they had gotten financing to continue on. But ultimately, I think it has been sold to a new group of investors. And you never know, like that group of investors may end up flipping it or something like that if they got a deal on it or however that works. But as far as I know right now, I believe that a new group of investors has that property and is planning on finishing it. But yeah, it's there. I mean, it's all right. It's truly due to the cost to build. Before any home in my area can be built, it's $35,000 in fees, not including the land. Yeah, and see, now that's the other thing. Like, somebody asked me the other day, like, what's the main, how can we fix the housing problems and stuff like that, or as far as bringing new inventory to the market? You're not going to. Like, uh-oh. Oh, my battery is dying. Oh, well, okay, well, I'm going to talk that real quick because then I have to turn my phone off because I can't see it anymore. But I just wanted to bring that up real quick, is that lumberjack landlord Matthew brings up a really good point about why there's about the housing market and the cost to build, right? $35,000 in fees before you even get started with the land or, the materials or contractors or anything else. You got $35,000 right there. So all these fees, all the cost of land, all the other added things coming into the cost of, like, just trying to put a house on a piece of property doesn't give you a whole lot of room to build a cheap home. You have to build a very expensive home in order to get the margins to pay for all that stuff, right? And then on top of that, let's just say that there is a piece of land, right, that is affordable, that doesn't have all those fees attached to it. It is very difficult to construct a home nowadays in the sense that you once did. Like, back in even prior to the 80s, how many people did you ever hear about building their own home? Like, they literally on the weekends after work went and constructed and built their very own home that they lived in. That doesn't really happen nowadays. I mean, you could probably find occasionally where it does occur, but for the most part, most people are probably not going to be able to build their own home, construct it with their own two hands, simply from the building codes and the styles of homes that are built nowadays. Just doesn't give it to them. You have to have professionals really doing it. And so this is another reason that you don't see as much inventory on the market as you had back in the day, or at least the added increase that can come to the inventory, just simply from the fact that a guy working at a gas station picking up material on his way home is no longer there to build his own home like they once did. Anyway, I can't see my screen anymore. It's gone completely black, so I gotta call it quits. This was an excellent live stream. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We had well over 300 people at one point, which is just awesome. We got close to 200 and something right now. I want to thank everybody for the super chats. I really appreciate the support. You guys are always so awesome. What else can I say? Uneducated Economist. You guys let me know.